You better be listening to SLEAZOIDS or I must break you.
Romeo and Juliet. Tale of star-crossed lovers, pulled apart by their families, by society, and some might say, by fate. Now, why is it that we are so moved by love that ends with separation?
I don't know that I believe in it.
Believe in what?
Love? Who would love her?
Last summer, after the crowds left, 5 strangers returned to the woods to uncover the truth. But one of them has a secret that will unlock the curse.
You know, if you don't believe in the Blair Witch, then why the hell did you bother to come?
I thought the movie was cool.
This fall, just in time for Halloween, the witch is back.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of SLEAZOIDS, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature Grindhouse style where we discuss 2 films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. And at the end of each episode, along with our honorary SLEAZOIDS, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon.
Next week, Santa is coming to town, and he's got guns, axes, and a lump of coal for your sleazy ass. So join the sleaze.
Decide all the official ratings for every film that we cover as well. Patreon subscribers also get an honor shout out and 2 bonus episodes every single month, which we are coming up on 8 years of bonus episodes. There's over 200 bonus episodes at this point, as well as our bonus transmission series where we talk about new release genre films, which there's over 60 of. And the next one that will be coming up will be the January trash one, which is always one of everyone's favorites every time that we get to do it. So if you haven't made the jump yet, patreon.com/SLEAZOIDS podcast, we recommend doing that. Speaking of which, we had a bunch of people make the jump this week to give their shoutouts to. We had Deep Red Pat, we had Stephen Vale, Braden Benham, Sonia, Brian, Sean Belding. Actually, Brian signed up at the annual tier, got an entire year of the show at a monthly discounted rate. So thanks to Brian. Also, Oliver Bose signed up as well at that tier. So thanks to you folks. We had Seth Latour sign up, Tim Viggers, Michael Newberger, BJP, Patrick Hance, Marinus de Jager, and Julian Kopkis. So thanks so much to all of you folks for signing up. Hope you're enjoying all those bonus episodes.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you. That's the one plug for the week. The other plug, as always, is Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you were listening on either one of those platforms, be sure to give us a good old rating and review over there. It helps us climb the ranks and find new listeners. And the last plug, as always, is merch. We have been hawking it for a few weeks now, but if you want the not necessarily new, but now, newer SLEAZOIDS dad cap, as well as the blowout theme designed shirt by friend of the pod Brandon Lim of Black Belt Cinema. It's a beautiful shirt filled with all of our favorite guests, as well as our favorite 80s movies on it. So if you're interested in that, the link is in the description of this episode, as well as over at sleazoidspodcast.com. That is it for the intro. Welcome back to another week. As always, I am your host, Josh Lewis, and joining me as always, my co-host,
Jamie Miller. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome. I believe 2 weeks ago would have been the last time you folks over here on the main feed would have heard from us, where we would have had special returning guest Hessa Denny of the Seeking Derangements and Movie Mindset podcast back on to conclude Noirvember with us. And she picked a double feature of John Huston's very influential ensemble heist noir, The Asphalt Jungle from 1950. And she paired it with Fred Zinnemann's very bleak post-war revenge noir, Act of Violence from 1949.
Yeah, especially The Asphalt Jungle has such a great ensemble cast. There's so many characters it's balancing, and just you really care about them as everything goes to total shit. But yeah, great double feature.
Yeah, I was going to say, we loved talking about Louis B. Mayer's comments about, why do I care about any of these people? They're all assholes and criminals and I don't like them, and it just became basically the default structure of how to do a heist, crime movie. Yep. So if you haven't heard that episode, again, that was 2 weeks ago over on the main feed. But then last week over on the Patreon, to coincide with a screening that we sponsored, speaking of Brandon of Black Belt Cinema, he showed a 35mm print of Shogun Assassin and he asked us if we wanted to sponsor that and go sell some merch in the corner. And so we did that last week. And we, I guess actually by the time you guys are listening to this, we did that last night. We decided that we were going to finally do an episode on that film, and we were going to pair it with another sort of wandering samurai killing machine fever dream film, which was Kiichi Okamoto's very nihilistic and nightmarish The Sword of Doom from 1966. We wanted to get sort of the inversion of the lone swordsman hero myth, and Tatsuya Nakade's performance in that, who recently passed away, is just amazing.
Oh yeah, it's incredible. Truly one of the darkest films I've ever seen. And then you mix all the samurai violence and the frenzied finale. The finale is something to behold, truly.
Yeah, it's the closest thing to the more sort of relentless and almost surreal, kind of qualities of Shogun Assassin, even if that takes it into a little bit more of a splatter manga, absurd direction.
Yeah, watching that finale, then going into Shogun really does make sense. So loved that double. Yeah,
so if you haven't heard that episode, again, that was last week over on the patreon.com/SLEAZOIDS podcast once again, as always. But moving right along to this week, we are once again joined by a very special returning guest. He is a writer, he is a director, he's a showrunner, and his most recent sort of animated television show, Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, is going to be coming out on Blu-ray soon. And he has an action comedy movie that I don't think we have a confirmed date we can tell you, but sometime in 2026, if I'm even allowed to mention it at all. I'm excited for people to hear about it. That guest is BenDavid Grabinski. BenDavid, welcome back.
Hey, I'm really stoked to be back and talk about a couple movies that are universally beloved, including by you two. So,
damn straight.
I think it's gonna be a really fun discussion. I decided to, pick two movies from the AFI Top 100 to just have like some really down the middle, cherished classics. I'm a little bit early to plug anything, but I have, a video game coming out next year, and the Blu-ray of my show, and then my first sort of studio action comedy thing, which I think are all comparable to Blair Witch 2 and Carrie 2. So I think this is all, there's a real theme here,
It all connects.
Yeah. No, we were talking a bit before we started, though, but we love anyone who comes on this show and is brave enough to be like, I'm going to bring on some much maligned, but honestly quite admirably weird movies that I like, and I have no idea if anyone else is going to like these movies. And, it's very rare that someone does it, and it's very different for the show, because most of the time someone's like, I'm going to show these movies something that they're going to love. I'm actually really excited.
I hoped that you would, but, hope doesn't really mean anything.
Well, sorry to disappoint you.
I know. I would have never watched Carrie 2. The trailer was like even notorious, where every time I saw it, as like a very early 2000s vibe, I'm like, I'm just never going to watch that movie. And then there's this thing that happens when you have like a subscription thing with a boutique Blu-ray label, where it just became a 4K that showed up, in a box in my mail from Vinegar Syndrome. I'm like, I guess I'll just throw this movie on. And maybe just coming from those expectations, I was just like, holy shit, I really like this. And I really thought it would be fun to discuss two sequels to basically perfect movies that didn't need sequels. And even the idea of making them is kind of insane. And I think that there's a lot of value in both of these movies, and I find them really interesting. So it felt like a kind of a good
they came out one
theme.
year apart. They both have nu metal goth girls in them, and both movies use their subtitle before their title, which I guess was maybe just a trend at the time.
Well, that's a spoiler. I was going to tell you guys that. I didn't know if anyone would notice that they have a title before the thing. Like Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, The Rage, Carrie 2. There's a connection there. With the titles. It's just mind-blowing, really. That's all I really have to say.
What do you think of us on this show? You thought we wouldn't notice that? What do you?
No, I mean, it's such a mind fuck. It's like the end of like every M. Night movie or Saltburn, when you're like, oh my god, I can't believe what actually happened. I didn't see this coming. Really, and that's the only note I have is that and something about Burn Notice. So I'm ready.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm very excited to jump into both of these very much maligned, but definitely ambitious and unnecessary sequels that I had some fun with. So let's do it. Let's kick things off and let's talk about the first one here, 1999's The Rage, Carrie 2.
See objects move by themselves. What is wrong with this picture? You've heard of Carrie White, haven't you? 73 people died night of the prom.
Next semester,
Rachel!
terror
Dude, it's her! It's her doing it!
runs in the family. The Rage, Carrie 2.
Man, we missed another killer party.
All right, we are talking The Rage, Carrie 2, the 1999 supernatural horror film directed by Katt, Shea, written by Raphael Moreau, and starring Emily Bergel as a young telekinetic high school student named Rachel Lang, who may or may not use her powers to take revenge against mean kids at her school, abusing her family, her friends, all this sort of stuff. Perhaps you've heard of the movie Carrie. This is, of course, for some reason, 2 decades later sequel to the iconic Brian De Palma 1976 adaptation of Stephen King's 1974 novel Carrie, about the telekinetic girl Carrie White, who is bullied at school and abused by her religious fanatic mother until she snaps and commits a very fiery, bloody mass murder against the student body of her high school, which I gotta be honest, BenDavid, maybe you knew this and maybe it's why you didn't check it out for a while. It's a pretty tough act to follow, I think you can admit.
Yeah, I mean, Carrie, it's a weird thing. It's just like, I can't even really think of like a funny analogy to compare it to. I was trying to think, it's like, you know, if like you married someone who was like, I don't know, they're like it's like having like a previous ex, you can't like live up to them or something. I just can't even think of anything to say. It's just the idea of even doing it is a folly. I like just fundamentally. I mean, I can't even, like, how do you live up to it? And I think
and especially when there's no like sequel book, you know, like you've seen people take Stephen King and be like, well, we'll also adapt the book that he wrote because he wrote a sequel. And this was like a case of like, no, we're inventing a sequel to this. And
it's
you know,
also a singular character story where there's not like something that you would think would, you know, carry on. So it is strange that they're just like, you know, even the connections they make within the film are very kind of campy and funny, where it's like it ends up being her half sister and all this kind of almost soap opera kind of stuff or whatever. So it's it feels like kind of strange in that way too, that it's like, why carry over a story when the main character has died? And
the answer is Paul Monash.
I had to do it. I had to do it to him.
Why carry over a story? I just really want to
exactly why do it? The question needs to be asked to producer Paul Monash, who is the one responsible for here. He produced the original Carrie. He also produced this one because this was originally written by the Hackers screenwriter Raphael Moreau as a completely independent, maybe sort of inspired by horror film, where Emily was already cast, and it was going to be directed by, I guess, a guy named Robert Mandel, who in 1996 was the director behind FX and School Ties. And for some reason, this project just kind of sat on a shelf, stalled out from like, I guess like 1991-ish to like 94, 95. And that was when Paul Monash got involved and was the one who said, you should rework this into a Carrie sequel because we could put that on the poster and people would go and see it. And also I can maybe talk to Amy Irving and maybe she'll reprise her role as Sue Snell. And, you know, we can, everyone can make some money here, even if this is coming out so much after the original that, like, I don't know, the Hitchcockian suspense stuff that De Palma's doing and the craftsmanship of, you know, Carrie is not something that's really trendy anymore. Now we're in the sort of like new metal era,
American Pie era.
Yes, Sissy Spacek, you know, is someone who they probably can't get to be in the movie, but maybe we'll get her blessing to use some clips from the movie that ended up getting her, you know, an Oscar-nominated performance. And, you know, it's one of those things where they didn't really think it through, I think, entirely, except for the fact that, you know, we can have something that's going to be popular with teens. They're going to go watch essentially what is, they're going to follow the structure of the original film, which is basically 3/4 a kind of dark high school drama And then what if we get into, a sort of gruesomely cathartic revenge massacre sequence by the end of the film that hopefully breaks people's hearts in the same way that, you get to the end of De Palma's and you're watching Sissy Spacek and Piper Laurie and you just want to kill yourself, I think.
Yeah. And then, of course, because it's like late 90s especially, but because it's still in that campier mode, all of the the kills are a little bit more over the top and a little bit more cartoonish with what items she's using at certain points in the finale. Well, of course, I'll get to that, but
and instead of having to do these slow ominous oneers up to pig blood, I mean, the technology has developed. We can have CG CDs flying into people's heads and stuff, you know, like it's
but even what's interesting too is that even in the beginning, it kind of presents itself like it's the original Carrie in a way. Like it has the mother and daughter in a house. The mother is kind of losing her mind a little bit. She's doing this thing that seems to be kind of a callback to the first one, at least with the red blood or red paint or something like that kind of imagery, where she's like painting a red line across her entire house. There does also seem to be religious figurines and stuff around, so they're still kind of keeping that, at least that image. It's not
the
really...
mother, by the way, J. Smith Cameron, Jerry from Succession, who I had not seen this young in a movie before, I don't think.
Oh yeah, and she's
What?
like she's got moments in it, right? She's in the intro and then kind of in these like middle scenes with the teacher where she's in the hospital. And then it is kind of used to try to convince her daughter that to calm down in the finale. It doesn't really work, but it's interesting that they at least show those things that you're used to from the first Carrie. It doesn't really carry over though. Like it's not like I keep using.
You're gonna have to stop doing
that.
I'm
trying.
Jamie.
I am. My brain just keeps doing it. I'm not even trying to make a pun. I swear to God, I do this every other week. I swear.
We're gonna call you out every single time you do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna be
next
conscious
time. I'm
about
gonna
it
pick a title that you can't use, like Poltergeist or something, and you're gonna find a way to keep using it, like as a verb or something.
I will too. My brain automatically does it. I swear.
It's gonna poltergeist right over. It's like it's not gonna make any sense.
But it seemed like they wanted to make the audience a little bit familiar with something before they went into like the campier stuff that they're going to do comparably to the original.
Yeah, they wanted to imply that horror mood that you're watching a Carrie movie. And also we're setting up that we have the crazy religious fanatic mother, even if she's really not that involved in most of this movie. She's kind of pretty extraneous to the movie. She feels like she was written in after the fact to, because she's institutionalized in this opening scene. She's arrested for, whatever, she's having some sort of schizophrenic episode in front of her daughter. And then she kind of disappears for most of the movie, and she runs into her daughter again during the finale, where she gets to have her moment where she's just like, I'm a crazy religious mother and you're possessed. And everyone's like, oh, okay, I guess this was related. It's not quite as intrinsic to the drama of the Rachel Lang character as it is for, obviously, in the original film, which could be something you see as either a problem for the movie or something that's good about it. I kind of liked that she had a completely different dramatic situation in this case. I feel like, and I also thought that Emily is really good, honestly.
Yeah, totally. I feel like it's like you're already taking the general premise of the first one and not doing much different with it. So I like that they can make these subtle changes instead. Well, what's funny too is though, instead of a abusive mother, now she has an abusive stepfather and stepmother. So it's like double the
foster parents,
double the problem. But
Yeah, because after the prologue where she is, that you're right, there is, kind of a sense of mood. There is a mood to it with the red and the blue paint and this kind of like synthy choir score. Almost has a bit of some Halloween knockoff notes in it. The religious iconography, the mother going mad, screaming about her daughter being locked up. Obviously, her having a sort of telekinetic response to it, like slamming all the windows of the house and realizing that she's going to get angry and she's going to be able to do something with that before getting into your 90s teen movie stuff, which I do have to say, say, this is so obviously coming out in that like post Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Disturbing Behavior, The Faculty. How many have we covered, Jamie? Urban Legend. Like these were the kinds of movies I was thinking about in terms of some of the style of when we meet back up with this Rachel character as like this goth girl living in, you know, shitty foster parents. She's got 9 Inch Nails and white zombie posters on her walls. You get the classic high school oneer, everyone's favorite shot. Here's the table of the geeks. Here's the table of the stoners. Here's the metalheads.
I love that shot. Ska music, so that's the thing.
What was that?
It's incredible. It's so exactly specific. You're playing a ska song and people are doing hacky sack, and I just felt like I was in a time machine.
And they also, I think, purposefully cast at least 2 actors that were in American Pie. And when did American Pie come out? Was that not a late 90s or was that an early 2000s?
No, this is Mina Suvari did this before. I believe she did this before that in American Beauty.
Oh, okay. Because I thought maybe they were, because they also cast one of the main guys in American Pie as like a kind of a geekier dude that doesn't get allowed into the parties, and he's also in it. So I just thought maybe there was a connection there where they were like, we're going to take these sex comedies and we're going to put these characters into the Carrie universe.
So they came out the same year. Which is interesting.
Yeah, so I think what happened was when someone is like usually what happens, like a casting director will like have someone audition and they'll say, oh, this person's pretty good. They could play a good teen in something. And they end up maybe almost getting a part or like getting a part or booking simultaneously. And everyone just kind of knows who's doing well and did a good audition or heard they were good in a thing. And they end up being in a bunch of things at the same time before like any of them have come out. It's really interesting because you get enough distance and you kind of start to forget the order of stuff. And you realize like, oh, that was before this. Like in the same way that the song All Star was an Inspector Gadget before Mystery Men, before Shrek. There's just a lot of like interesting order of pop culture stuff that like gets screwed up. But luckily we have the internet to narrow it down. But the Mina Suvari being in this first was the one that kind of blew me away because it's like a pretty big find. Like she had a really good run.
Well, and also in terms of just subject matter, it's something that I think is like the fact that you would be in both of these films and they seem to be both taking on this idea of, you know, like there is a bit of a obviously American Pie iconic sort of like sex comedy in that regard, but also having so many of the exact attitudes, I think, that the characters who are deemed obvious villains in this film have to a pretty extreme degree. Because for anyone who hasn't seen this film, like basically the Rachel Lang character is kind of positioned as a bit of like a Daria, like kind of like a loner, and with the exception of her best friend Lisa, who in the opening scenes of the film commits suicide by basically gruesomely hurling herself off the school building onto a car in the parking lot. And if you want to call it the sense of humor of the film, is like after the body lands on the car, there's blood everywhere. A joke that this movie makes is that the jock dude who films everything with his camcorder comes and is trying to like film the body and be like, oh yeah, this is awesome, you know, like that kind of stuff. And then he also films like girls' asses with it and stuff like that. And you get the impression, I think, fairly quickly in this that they are going to very, I think, confrontationally address the idea of very jock bro sort of rape culture around this time, which was, from what I saw, it was inspired by a 1993, I believe, case that I read of a bunch of guys who ended up being investigated for a sort of group assault or something like that. But it's something that you still see, I think, a lot of the times in, you know, whether it's football or whether for Canadians here, we just had a huge trial that went down with Hockey Canada for this exact stuff, where you have guys just like filming girls. And also, I mean, in this case, you know, it seems exaggerated, but as someone who has seen what hockey players say to each other sometimes, it's not that exaggerated, where they call girls like bulldog property, and they, you know, participate in a lot of very classic sort of humiliation pranks in between, essentially protecting each other from rape accusations and charges that could, quote unquote, you know, ruin their careers. And some of the guys say, you know, we're all friends here, we all grew up together, we need to protect each other. They start introducing ideas of like, some of them are from wealthy, prominent families who have like district attorney fathers who can help them get away with it. And I was honestly kind of surprised at just, I think, how the style, the new metal style, and the sort of teen caricature, I guess you could say, writing, I think in some ways made me prepared for a lighter film than one that was going to be directly addressing this subject matter in such a frank and kind of honest way. Yeah, it feels like as if you're going to get the more traditional kind of sex comedy stuff. I mean, in the introduction, you do feel like a discussed, of course, like you go to the jock table and they start talking about how like each girl is worth a certain amount of points and how they're going to either avoid or use specifically the, you know, the quote unquote uglier ones and stuff. So it feels really just... And that was the part that was real, apparently. That was the stuff based on, it was called the Spur Posse. And so that was exactly what their game was that they got caught doing. Right. And then, and then eventually in the movie, it shows even like they all have like a little black book where they tally the points and stuff. Like it's pretty wild shit. But of course they also have the more, you know, traditional campier stuff where one of the guys in the jock group is like sensitive and is looking at all of the girls as if it's like something maybe he shouldn't be doing. Dazed and confused Jason London is the nice jock kid who actually, you know, despite being dared by the other guys to go and sleep with like the popular hot cheerleader girls like Tracy in the film, played by Charlotte Ayana, also in Jawbreaker, speaking of girls sort of crossing over in performances and tones and stuff. They cheer him on and they drink and drive and they keep score in the book and all of that. But he's the one who, you know, he's a romantic. He actually has a crush on Rachel. You know, he actually, you know, even though he meets her by seeing her running in the street holding her dog all bloody because it just got ran over by a car, which was maybe the scariest moment in the entire movie when I thought that basset hound was going to die. I just couldn't believe...
I'm sorry, I wasn't coughing to get attention. I was just coughing to cough. But I also really got to talk about this because... So I have a friend who's a huge movie person, but... has for some reason never been into horror. And a couple of years ago, started watching horror movies and got really into them. And in October, we'll say, hey, can you just give me a list of things that I missed, I need to catch up on? And I just randomly, you know, picked just a bunch of horror movies off the top of my head. And somehow a dog died in every single one of them. And I didn't even have a memory of that. And I started realizing that just the most random movies. You're like, I didn't remember that a dog dies in Audition. I didn't remember that a dog dies in this movie. I didn't remember, like, and then it is this continuous thing. So when I watch this, I was like, are you fucking kidding me? Is this just a thing? Like, is a dog die in every horror movie? And the fact that they were so, like, courageous to actually know the subplot is that they save the dog and take the dog to the vet and all these things. I'm like, a horror movie, that just doesn't happen. The dog just dies. Yeah. So this was like revolutionary, man. I just was like, it's so against the trope that I have to applaud it. I just have to. And yeah, I have to say, I brought it up a number of times on the show, but my wife and I use the website called doesthedogdie.com, which is very useful because it was started by people who are very sensitive to seeing that on screen and just want to be, you know, you literally, it was just, you look up the title and it says yes or no. Does the dog die? Do you need to prepare yourself for that? Do you need to skip a scene? Do you, you know, whatever. That was what the site started as. My wife is very, she has a problem seeing on-screen vomit. It's very upsetting to her to see it. She's kind of trained herself into being like, if it's in a movie, she can either look away or she can, you know, she's kind of exposure therapied her way through it. But that was but that was how we used it, was to just look up that particular thing that she didn't want to see. But obviously the site was started because so many people have trouble with the dog scene. And I'll be honest, this was one of the few podcast movies. My wife doesn't usually do this, but she was like,
I want to watch Carrie 2. I tell her what I'm watching for the week, and this is what we're watching. And when that scene happened, she was like, why didn't I use the website I always use every time we watch a movie? And luckily we looked it up after, and it said, no, the dog does not die. It was a rare case.
Well, two things on that. One, I only did that once with the movie to Google it, and it spoiled the ending of the movie I was looking up. It was basically like, the dog doesn't die and Rosebud's a sled. I'm like, hold the fuck up. Why are we ruining the movie I want to watch? Like, these things are unconnected.
No, see, this is you have to scroll just for the thing you want. Like, we do the same thing. We literally scroll to, is there vomit in this movie or not? And luckily we have not had like a case of like, yes, there is vomit, and also it's a huge spoiler for the ending of the movie.
I wrote a movie for Barry Sonnenfeld where someone vomited, and he made me remove it because he said, I will throw up if I'm in Video Village and this scene happens, or if I'm in the edit. And famously, there's this scene where he's operating a camera in Blood Simple when the character pukes, and then he threw up while shooting the shot, and the camera like tilts a little bit because he's that much of a sympathetic puker. So having to cut the puking scene out of a script that I thought was a very good moment, just because the director is like, yeah, I can't shoot this.
I can't handle this. I'm going to need a secondary director for that day.
Okay, I'm going to have to let my wife know that every Barry Sonnenfeld movie is safe. You're good.
That's actually very true. It's very true.
They should also, I will say this, even though the dog doesn't die, on that site, they should have a little asterisk with a warning that's like,
dog gets really fucked up.
Yeah, the most like extreme like run over I've ever seen.
What happens if a dog pukes?
Oh yeah.
If a dog pukes, is that an even worse problem?
It might be
a double whammy.
I don't think we've had it, or we've had to address that yet, but maybe one day.
But like the direction of how this dog gets run over is actually crazy.
Oh,
like,
I was convinced it was dead. Yeah, it's intense.
They make like a puppet of it, and then have it get run over, and you see it go through the wheels and everything. And it's a giant
It's
truck
also an
too.
Extremely adorable basset hound, worth noting.
It's so, it really gut punched me in that moment, I will say. And then, I mean, they quickly resolve it. So I think, because I don't think they want you to linger on that too hard. But it is funny
to use it as the meet cute, I think, between the Rachel and the Jesse character, where he picks her up, takes her to a diner, the dog ends up okay, and they end up going on a series of sort of dates together, he admiring that she's a bit of an outcast or an original, or herself, as he kind of puts it, not one of the fake, lame, shiny, happy people, as they put it, like he's expected to be. And they end up developing a relationship with each other that a lot of the other students aren't stoked about, because she was close friends with the girl who just committed suicide because one of the jocks told her that she was just a pump or just a nut, and that's the language that they use in this film.
What I love, not love, but like what I think is very good. What I think is very good about the scene is how like they're saying that disgusting language, but the guy is still like kind of worked up and crying over the fact that he's about to, like, his life is going to be destroyed, rightfully so. And it's it has this I don't know, that mix of his actual concern and the acting was pretty interesting, just while saying something like it was a nut or whatever. Just like the immaturity based on the actual kind of consequences he's facing, I thought was decent.
But I think that's one of the most interesting things about the movie for me, is that all of these kids need to die, and they deserve to die, and they're like as evil as jerk kids could ever be, but they also have like a humanity to them. And the sad thing about it really is like, the cycle is created by the coach or by bad parents, and like these fucked up evil kids are also just kids, but they're like performing in a way to try to feel like men and try to like boost each other up, but they're all just like their coach is a psycho bully. Their parents are just like,
that scene of him making the guy strip his pants down and like screaming into his ass or whatever he was doing. Like, again, the sexual humiliation stuff and the sexual power dynamic stuff is taught down from the coach.
Yeah, and they're all just in this weird, horrible cycle, which also kind of works in the legacy sequel sense, but it's just a reality thing where it's like, this awful behavior is taught. But the thing, what you're bringing up, there is something funny about the idea that they're so desensitized to how shitty they are that he can just use that language and not be self-aware of it in the moment, you know?
Yeah.
Like he's not like, wait a minute, am I the baddie? Like he's not, but
yeah, not even when they're like terrorizing her at her home and doing like creepy scream prank calls, but in like Donald Duck voice. Like they're very clearly doing the most cartoonishly like villainous shit that they could be doing. And they're just like, well, we need to scare this girl into, you know, not sharing the photo evidence of you with this girl the night that you essentially sort of statutory raped her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because that's just guys being guys.
What's interesting in those moments too is that, just speaking on the writing, is how they implement like pop culture references again. I think they reference Scream in that moment, don't they? When he calls her and she's like, "What's your favorite scary movie?" and says stuff like that. So that's also a huge difference between, you know, the original and this one. Again, they are purposefully and kind of in the like right in front of you, just kind of using the references and the popular, I guess, horror movies that were of that decade and being like, we're kind of like this too, you know what I mean? But we're also like the 70s original at the same time. I don't know if they perfectly get that balance, of course.
Yeah, every once in a while the movie cuts back to footage from the other movie and you do wonder, you're like, I don't know if that's doing you quite the favors you want it to be doing, unfortunately, even if I do think that for the most part, I mean, I think Katt Shea, who took this on as like the week before it started shooting when another director quit, I think this is actually pretty solid work that she's doing. We talked about her before because she did that erotic thriller Poison Ivy with Drew Barrymore as that evil sort of femme fatale version of like Cher Horowitz from Clueless. It is a good movie, and seducing like Tom Skerritt Fatal Attraction style to try to kill his wife. It's a pretty skeezy movie, and she makes sense for this. And, you know, I guess was just a last minute, like, we have a female centered teen horror film. We are addressing some pretty dark topics in it. Do you want to, you know, jump on this? And she does. And, you know, it's one of those things where, you know, she was also an actress who spent some time in sort of like the theater in California, and eventually graduated into the, you know, Roger Corman School. And she made some erotically charged like exploitation movies before, like Strip to Kill, which was about the female cop who goes undercover as a stripper to catch a killer, or Dance of the Damned, which is the vampire stripper. A lot of stripper movies. And so, you know, she was someone who was, I think, willing to go into some of these disturbing and gross territories when it comes to crossing genre with gender politics. And so she honestly made quite a bit of sense, I think, for this movie. And despite the limited budget, you know, is making some of these horror sequences work when they hit, like when she starts getting telekinetic and when she starts, I mean, we'll get to it, but like the finale, I think, is honestly quite good. It's quite strange looking at times because of the budgetary limitations, but it's an ambitious massacre sequence that, you know, this movie has to build to in some way. And I was still surprised by the details of it, I guess I'll say. Yeah,
she finds a lot of different ways of just making it feel like, make every sequence, especially when it comes to the supernatural stuff, a little different. Like one of the first ones I remember, or even before that actually, is they kind of have this camera pan where they follow her when she's a child and the powers are kind of sprouting, and it just follows her going from like room to room as the doors close by themselves and all of that. Honestly, it kind of reminded me of Matilda, which, if you've ever seen that,
yeah, okay, I see it. Okay,
but then later on, when
what did you guys think of all the black and white stuff? Out of curiosity,
yeah, I was just going to mention that.
I have a thought about all that, which I guess I'll just get into. I was going to bring up later, because both movies succumb to a thing, which is when they switched to digital editing and people started using the Avid, and I think it was mid to late 90s. Someone's going to hear this and say I was all wrong, but there's this thing that happened where people really sort of started abusing it because they're too excited about how easy it was to do stuff. I think the biggest example for me is like the transitions on the show Angel, where you kind of have these like crazy flashes of images and all these kind of really weird things, or like the movie 13 Ghosts just does it nonstop.
Oh, sure.
But it's where you kind of have these really crazy kind of jagged moments where it almost function as jump scares, or people abuse how easy it is to switch from like black and white to something being like sepia tone to being like inverted. And there's like this 5-year range where people just started doing crazy stuff, I think, because it was easier to do it. So it's like, hey, look what we can do. And then people got a little bored of it. But it's like the same, like every early 2000s trailer does it like crazy, where you're just suddenly always will just like cut to a quick flash of something in black and white, then go back to color. And both of these movies are really within that pocket of, you know, we'll get into it later with Blair Witch, but like the last minute reshoots they forced on them and the re-edit really feels
all the
like
flash editing
we're doing
in that movie is nuts.
So both of them, it's like, I find it charming, but it is one of the weirdest ways to date a movie, which I don't functionally think that dating a movie is a problem, but it is interesting. Like they usually do just call it new metal horror now. And what they usually mean with that is just abusing the avid is my hot take on all of those things.
No, that makes a lot of sense, because I mean, it's worth noting this movie is shot by Donald M. Morgan. This guy shot Christine and shot Starman for John Carpenter. I think Christine is maybe the big point here, where you have to imagine it's partially why he got the gig for this, because it's another sort of teen horror movie in that way, a lot of school scenes. And you just look at the distinction. Obviously, you'd also have 15 years of technology changing and obviously budgetary differences and directing differences, all this kind of stuff. But I sat there and went, there's so much elegance and patience to the way that Christine moves. And I was watching this and I felt exactly what you're describing, I think, which is that they were like, as soon as she starts using her powers, what if it's like these intense close-ups, and what if it's suddenly black and white to symbolize the fact that she's getting angry or the powers are starting to come out? And then I was kind of like, is the whole final sequence then going to be black and white to do that? Not really. They don't really commit to it. It does feel like they were just, how do we make this visually, I guess, a little overwhelming or visually odd or off kilter in a way that you know that something, you know, bizarre is taking place, and the fact that she's getting angry using her powers. She uses it a lot during that brief attempt where the guys are trying to sort of home invade her, a little bit in some of the stuff with Amy Irving when she like knocks the cup off the desk or like breaks the snow globe due to the psychic stress of sort of like losing her friend. And Amy Irving is kind of here now as the sort of school guidance counselor. I found her inclusion quite funny as well, because it's classic Legacy sequel stuff, but in a kind of charming way, because I like her as an actress. But she has like maybe the most difficult thing to do, which is like a janitor comes up to her at one point, or like maybe a school security guard or something, and is like, are you sure you're not still trying to save a girl that died 20 years ago? And it's like cut to Sissy Spacek footage, and you know, like this kind of stuff. Like they're really underlining the fact that she's a school counselor, she's seeing another girl going Carrie mode, and she's literally like telling her about her lineage, at one point literally taking her to the destroyed school that no one has cleaned up or touched in 20 years, where she's like, here is where your half-sister murdered and massacred a bunch of people and burned down the school. And you know, she's like,
that as well.
Yeah, you're not crazy. She wasn't the devil. You just have a recessive gene that gives you telekinesis. And I really don't want to have you have another Carrie White moment, you know, kind of thing. Like, don't let the popular kids play a prank on you and get really angry at them and murder them all. And it's just very funny to have Amy Irving delivering stuff like that when, you know, it's Carrie 2. We know this is going to happen. We know that at some point, you know, they're going to perform some sort of humiliation at a party. And I will say the one that the popular kids perform on her is pretty nuts in this movie. And again, you know, very, you know, of the time, but somehow still just more relevant with the revenge porn angle of it.
Yeah, I like the idea that you think Amy Irving's character is like the Muppets in the Muppet movie when they like pick up the script to like catch up on what's going on. It's like Amy Irving's character like knows there's going to be this third act. She thinks she's going to stop it from happening again, guys. She doesn't know she's in a horror movie this time. I would also like to say when I posted a story about this movie when I watched it like at 2 a.m. like, hey, I really like this movie. Holy shit. And then Amy Irving's Instagram account liked my story. And I got to tell you, starstruck. that's the coolest. That's my favorite notification I've had on Instagram.
That's sick. She, by the way, though, it's kind of wild too that, just speaking on her character, that she gets one of the most brutal deaths as well. That's equal to one of the like terrible jocks that
it's so fucked
is
up
in the group. It's crazy. I really wasn't expecting. I was probably expecting her to get taken out, maybe tragically, which it does. It's just to have it actually be like an equally violent, the same kill really, because they're connected. She gets impaled through a door when she's looking through like the keyhole, and one of the jocks is right there on the other side, and they both get impaled through the head. And they even have a shot where the door opens and both of the bodies are like hanging there for a second, and you can just see Irving, and you're like, it's really shocking. It truly is, because I thought there'd be a little bit more of a sensitivity to her death than there is not at all.
But it would be, I'd like to imagine that she's like, all right, guys, I'll do Carrie 2, but you have to kill me off brutally in the third act, so I'm not in Carrie 3. And they're actually, all kidding aside, there is a precedent for that. That's happened multiple times in movies where someone dies. I'm like, it's so weird that character died, and I later find out it was part of like their contract negotiation. It's like they didn't want to do more of them, so they're like, you have to kill me off too. So I think that would be the real move.
Amy, let us know. Is that did you do that?
And they're like, well, we're already like stabbing someone through a door, so we'll just like combine those two deaths to just be economical here.
Yeah, and there is like an interesting kind of deflating moment with that too, because like we said, like she's set up to be some type of hero or maybe help the situation in the inevitable finale, and then when almost immediately when she gets there, that's what happens. So you just feel like there's no one else on
it's the Scatman Crothers thing. I probably just said his name wrong, from The Shining, where you have the B thread of the person who is going to do everything they can to stop this tragedy, and the second they arrive, just dead. So
it does make her role very funny and feel like the most like script retooling that they did, which was that, look, we need to have a character from the original. She needs to give the protagonist all the information about the original because she saw it. She needs to be the most, and it helps. I think Amy Irving, by being someone who is sort of traumatized or upset by the events of the original movie, and being the character who is in that like dream shot where Carrie's arm comes out of the ground and grabs her, and being the traumatized character, it makes sense for her. But the fact that just so cynically, she's the one who, her subplot is to go break the mother out of the institution and bring the mother back for the climax so that she can just do I'm a crazy religious mother. And I'm just like, oh, I actually forgot that you have anything to do with this. And you really don't need to be part of this finale at all. She's not abusive enough she's not as dominant of a character in the way that like Laurie Piper's, abuse of Sissy Spacek is such an equal amount of what happens to her as what happens to her at the school. Because we only ever see the mother in the prologue and then we see her at the ending, I was like, I don't really know the mother needs to be involved in any of this. I think she's more mad at all of the jocks in the swank mansion who just decided to tell her that her boyfriend was part of a sex for points scoring game, and then projected sex tape footage of them on like their what she thought was her losing her virginity and falling in love kind of moment. And that is ultimately what kind of triggers the climactic massacre of the film that Jamie, you were just pointing out one of the first major deaths of. But this was around the time in the movie where I think it had gone so long without showing us something that particularly gruesome outside of maybe the dog being run over, that I really did not expect heads flying, throats being slit, people being stabbed by glass, there being
their balls
weird
shot
use
off by a harpoon.
Yeah, what? Like that's
Crazy
like castration via harpoon into mansion pool is something I can say I have actually never seen before.
Yeah,
and yet you guys are behaving as if this movie is just fine. So this is where we have a huge disagreement. Is you're describing movie history, and
it's true.
I am sort of kidding, but not. I think that there's really, how many movies have like one good kill? And there are so many great kills in the finale, and they're killing characters who you spent so long hating. It is very satisfying, I think. It's just like, and also, why is there only 2 movies where people get murdered with CDs? Like why did people only have
Hellraiser 3?
Yeah, why did people only have that vision twice? Like everyone should be killed with CDs. Wait. Dark Angel, I Come in Peace, right? Isn't that?
I was gonna say.
Yeah, the guy is like killing people with CDs. So we're talking about 3 classics.
We got 3
here. Like, although I would say objectively, Hellraiser 3 does not have any of the kind of thematic resonance of the first 2. I would say it is like a great Freddy sequel. You know, it really feels like an offshoot Nightmare on Elm Street movie, but man, that third act is sick.
Yes, totally. And I think too, like with this finale, the direction itself kind of works with the violence too, because like, as you know, she has the 4 giant screens at the movie at the party, and she sees herself having sex with Jesse, and everyone's
it gets
laughing
so
at
weirdly post distorted with like the waves and the zooms and again the flashes and the black and white. And I did like her rose thorn tattoo growing all over her body, which I couldn't tell if that was I'm gonna guess it was CG, but I don't know.
And it's like they're doing all these like crazy kind of spins and everything. It just feels like it does feel like a brewing chaos is about to occur. I do think that they do a good job with that. It's a lot campier and poppier, but I still do like all of the weird edits. They're just kind of, it feels like they're just throwing together to create this kind of disorienting feeling as she gets angrier and angrier.
Have we also seen death via automated pool cover before? I feel like we have for some reason. It kind of rings a bell.
Maybe. I do think pool cover, but I don't know if mansion automated. I don't know if we got that fancy with it, but
I used to have nightmares about that when I was a kid, about like swimming in the pool and then a cover closing over me. I'm sure a psychologist or shrink or whatever would say what that means, but all I know
they would
that
unpack
was
that
something
for you.
I was very afraid of. That and someone using a harpoon to shoot my balls off. So like these are very common nightmares that I think got manifested in this movie.
Mm-hmm. I do wish that the like the head jock, who definitely is like, you know, the worst one, or at least presented as such with the dialogue, and I think he's kind of the mastermind behind it. I do think that there's a lot of fear in drowning, of course, but he does have like the least like expressive and violent death on the screen compared to the impaling of you know, of the head for Irving and the other jock, the castration with the harpoon of the other guy, the glasses that shatter.
The girl who gets her glasses broken and eyes like exploding seemingly, which is funny because we're going to be talking about that again next week with one of the Silent Night, Deadly Night movies we're talking about.
Hell yeah. But yeah, and it is satisfying though, because they spend a lot of time before this finale, like just having all of these, you know, popular jockey types come up and just do the pseudo fake nice thing that you just know as it piles on it's totally full of shit. I don't think the movie actually presents it that way. I'm not sure if they're trying to do like a total kind of twist thing, but there's too many implications for it to be a twist. I feel like at the end of the sex scene that they have, they do show them, you know, sleeping in the bed, and then they have a shadow go by the window or whatever, heavily implying, of course, that someone was there recording.
Yeah.
But it's just really not well calibrated.
Well, and they give them the house too, right? Like they literally stage it to be like, yo, you use my like parents, like, you know, like they're out for the weekend. Like you can go totally have sex with your girlfriend there. Mm-hmm. We will not film you. We swear.
Specifically that.
But I mean, I think it's really, really well calibrated, because these are movies made for teens. And, you know, you like a 15-year-old kid goes and sees this on a Friday night, and you start to being like, wait, are they like, you know, you start to kind of lull into it, but you want to feel like how Carrie feels, where like, she's just like, oh, wow, these people are kind of being nice to me. Oh, they're kind of being supportive. Oh, it's kind of this, which makes what they actually do hit so much harder. It's like really well structured in that way. I mean, it doesn't have the sophistication of the original, but my argument really about this movie is I think and this is really, I swear to God, I'm not being glib here, but I think it was literally ruined by Columbine, because Columbine happened a month after this came out, and it got pulled from theaters, and then they barely spent any P&A for home video, because it really, people connected these two things too much. Because, you know, a fictionalized representation of, you know, all the bad kids in school getting comeuppance, which, you know, on top of that was just way too dark for people to handle, even though they really have nothing in common. But this movie is, I think, a kind of a perfect structure to replicate. Like, if they made like 10 Carrie movies like this, where it's like every time it's a girl who, like, it doesn't fit in, and then they create this perfect storm of people being so awful to her that when she snaps at the end, there's that catharsis. Like, it really works as like a thing, because the longer it takes to get to the finale, the more the finale hits. Like, because I am an adult who watches way too many movies, and I understand how movies work way more than I should. And yet I kind of forgot that's where it was going. Like, when I'm watching it, at some point it starts to feel like I'm watching just a really good sort of functional melodrama about like a teen girl, except for like the avid farts and like the black and white stuff or the connection to the original movie. You still sort of feel like I'm just watching a movie about a girl falling in love and about a jock realizing he doesn't want to be like his friends. And then it becomes this hardcore horror movie. And there's something very satisfying about having 90% of a movie not go that hard, because then when it gets so violent and so crazy, it's more shocking than it would be. You know, like, it's this is another weird connection. It's like the problem with a lot of Michael Bay's new movies is like his first sequence will be like the third act of another movie. So by the time you get to the third act, you're like, all right, like, how much more exciting can this be? You're just sort of desensitized to spectacle.
You don't have that build up.
Yeah. And this movie, you're just, by the end, you're like, yeah, well, she's probably going to like drop something on some of them. I hadn't seen a frame of the finale. So when it happened, I just kept being like, what the fuck? This is like, I didn't know any of this would happen. And then it just kept happening and kept escalating. And there was just something very satisfying about that. It's like you get an audience to just get so used to it not being this hardcore horror movie that when it becomes one, it's like a very functional use of like the slow burn method, you know?
Yeah, because most of it, like most of this movie is not her using her powers even really accidentally. Like, you have the one moment where she's a kid, where she's closing all the doors. You have the moment where she breaks the globe. Like,
she finds her friend's body and she like moves all the lockers and stuff like that. Right. The jocks try to invade the home and she kind of scares them away with them.
Feels
but
like
it's
these moments, which I guess in the original Carrie, that's kind of the issue, or not the issue, but what they do as well, how they kind of ramp up the powers. But there is something about her actually, it's fake, but connecting with these people for a longer period of time. I feel like they have the scene where, you know, they even go to prom together with the girls and they're getting dressed as they're driving, and she feels like she's really a part of it. She gets to the party and everyone is apologizing to her and giving her drinks and making her feel just wonderful. It just feels like that those moments are just a little bit longer and more concentrated on her honestly becoming part of the in-group rather than them just being like okay with her. They're actually kind of like, come on in, you know, we're all friends here. There's like a little bit of more trust, so that when she is shown that, you know, her sex tape at the party, it just really feels, I don't know, it does feel a little bit more egregious and just awful than the pig's blood for some reason. I think
because that's the thing is I obviously, you know, it's Carrie 2, and so I didn't have the experience of not knowing what was coming, but I was still surprised. I was surprised at like what it was that like I didn't expect it to go as far as like projecting the sort of revenge porn on the screen, and for her to then get into this insanely new metal supernatural horror sequence where she is just gruesomely murdering each one in increasingly ridiculous ways. And obviously the catharsis of it is built into the structure of the original film that they're copying. It's such a genius structure that, yeah, they should just keep making Carrie movies, because it clearly works every single time. Or, you know, even if you want to do your own Carrie knockoff, or, you know, do your own sort of unique version of it, there's something to be stolen from here regularly. I do just think, what even getting to the finale, for me, it was, I think, the tonal control between some of the incredibly dark and I think effective subject matter, and then moving into the more sort of cartoonishly, almost tasteless genre thrills. Because there's something about this obviously had to do it, because there's been a whole 2 decades of slasher films that have existed in between the original Carrie and this, and people they wouldn't just be satisfied, I think, seeing some of the things that you see in the original Carrie. Right. So, but I did sit here and go, man, that guy's nuts literally flew off the end of a spear gun into a pool, and I'm laughing, and I get that, again, that's cathartic, and, you know, there is something to that, but it was like, I was thinking of the subject matter of, you know, I had some of the recent news articles of the hockey bros in my mind while watching that. And I think for some people that could be a bit of whiplash you'll feel watching those two things, you know, happening. Or maybe like BenDavid, you will be like, hell yeah, this is exactly how we need to address this.
I mean, you have two contrasting things that I think the movie does very well that do kind of hurt each other, which is, on one hand, the psychology of these jocks and what they do and how they behave is so real, and it sounds like language that I've heard. It sounds like like real awful, like inhuman kind of pack mentality behavior of how they treat women. Like, all these things that they do are so evil and sensitive, but it has a level of reality to it that stings, because it feels like this is only like 2 degrees removed from reality. Like, you know, it's stylized, and it's not like their dialogue is natural, but their behavior and what they're doing is stuff that people do. And it's really fucked up. And they do, I think, a really good job of showing kind of like the banal evil that way people can behave. But then the finale is so disconnected from reality by virtue of what's happening that they do kind of butt heads against each other. Having said that, I wouldn't change either of the things, which is sort of the issue. It's like, on one hand, that's a problem. But on the other hand, I want both of those things. It's I want to feel like these are, you know, there's like a realism to their like emotional abuse and all this shit that they're doing. And it makes it more dramatic. And I want those over-the-top kills, but it does feel slightly like 2 different movies. And whether or not that's a pro or con, I guess is subjective, like everything is. But there's something very satisfying about how it's almost from dusk till dawn level of like the genre side of it explodes so much. But it is, it's like, is the trade-off that everything that they do should be cornball, like 80s bullies?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't, and there's not really an answer to it. You know, it's like we're just presented with the movie as it is, you know, like no one's saying, hey, how would you change this? But I think it's just really interesting how much it just hits the fucking pedal to the floor and becomes a full on over the top horror movie. You know, it's like, it almost feels like they pass it off. Like when you're watching an anthology movie with different directors, it really almost has that level of escalation where it's like, she's like, all right, well, I'm gonna let someone else do the last 2 weeks. You know, it's like such a change in style. Whereas like De Palma, if he's shooting 2 people talking, it's heightened cinematic execution, you know, and this movie is a lot more kind of, you know, spare in its stylization until the violence happens. Like the opening is already super stylized, you know, before anyone dies.
Of course. Yeah. Well, and I think that was just my experience watching this as someone who didn't know exactly what it was going to be. And I'm interested in going back to it and seeing if I feel any differently. But I did sit there and kind of go, I think, despite Katt Shea's, sometimes, ability to coming from that Corman, sort of genre bending and being able to mix genre with the gender politics stuff. Like, I do think she's the right person for this. I did think that she was, a lot better at handling the really dark high school rape culture drama that was happening in the film. And I think that maybe it's also because I think Emily is maybe giving like a really solid performance as well as the sort of like goth girl half sister, character here. And for me, it was when I could feel the producer notes of being like, okay, now retool it though, so that she goes and she learns about Carrie and go and do this kind of stuff. And those were the moments where I felt it not necessarily fully working for me. And then I got to the finale and I was like, wait, were all those moments worth it? Yeah. And like that was kind of my reaction to watching the movie, as I said, I kind of had the opinion that it was better as a non-Carrie movie and just how it was sort of addressing this, like doing this really dark high school drama, even if it was still exaggerating some of it in that kind of, post Kevin Williamson kind of way. And then I was kind of going, and then some of when she uses her power and freaks out, it looks a little janky. And every time Amy Irving and the mother are kind of extraneous to this movie, judging by how they even treat them during the finale. And I had this written out and ready to go. And then I got to the finale and I was like, you know what? I wouldn't cut that from this movie. What do you mean? That's like one of the most wild. It was, and so I think that was why, if we're pivoting towards reductive rating around this, ended up in closer to the 3 territory. For me, but I will say, like, I think that this is absolutely, like, despite the fact that you look up the production for this and it is exactly the sort of hastily fast-tracked and kind of cynical commercial retooling you would expect of something like this, it is not anywhere near as bad as its reputation would suggest. And I do agree, I think, with BenDavid, that it maybe just did get harmed by, similarly Silent Night, Deadly Night, like kind of being pulled from theaters and not being able to kind of have that extended conversation people were having about it. And yeah, maybe people looking back on it now and being like, maybe, are you nostalgic or do you cringe when you see this era of nu metal movie making? For me, I still find it quite charming, and the movie itself more effective and weird than I had heard. So I still had a good time with it, but yeah, definitely not without some weird tonal whiplash going on in my mind while I was watching it.
Well, you described my exact experience, which is I spent everything until the finale. My thought was, do I like this? It's better than I thought it'd be. I kind of like these characters. And the finale happened. I was like, no, I love this movie. Like, it took me a while to really, like, once I got to the end, that's one of my favorite kind of movie experiences, where you're kind of like, do I like this movie? And then by the time it's over, it's like, yes. Like, it's like, it all kind of just becomes, even if it's in hindsight, it kind of clicks into place. Because I was like, why is the mom in this? It just feels so forced. I'm like, you kind of need her. Well, why are we doing this thing? You do need that. Like, you sort of gradually, it's almost you're getting held hostage by the movie, and you're eventually like the Stockholm Syndrome of a movie kind of thing, where you're like, no, this is fucking dope. I'm fine with all of it. This is good.
I'm at the 3 as well. I will say this is actually my second time watching it. And the first time I watched it, I didn't take to it as much. I think it was because I just had the original so locked into my head, specifically its style. Like, of course, we've been talking about how almost the same the story is, but it's just obviously the style is very different, having De Palma be the director. But so yeah, I just had a hard time letting that go at first. But the second time around, knowing what it was, knowing that it was going into a more like, at least in the sense of its tone in the first half, like kind of those late 90s like teen sex comedy things, mixed with Carrie, and then eventually going into the rage and the revenge and all of that, I thought really worked for me the second time. I could kind of let go of the tone that I love so much of the original. And there is some like we were saying with the lead up to the finale, where it becomes just so much more exaggerated in style with all the spins and the fades and just these like weird close-ups and everything. It does kind of give you the sense of like a subjective viewpoint from Rachel, where it's like when that happens, when they're at the party and they display the sex tapes, literally everyone in the party is laughing at her, and it just feels like in a more reality-based movie, there'd be like there'd be some people that would be like, oh, like look at that, like kind of on the just the evil side of things, especially the jocks that we've been following.
But someone would be uncomfortable and maybe leave.
Yeah, right, and
or do something.
And the fact that doesn't happen at all feels as if it's kind of going into this like subjective viewpoint for a little while, and then she just kills everybody. And I think that the exaggerated style can kind of give to that, and I think that that's cool. And so there's a lot here that I think Katt has more control over than you might originally think. At least for me, the first time, I just was kind of whiplashing, like you said, Josh, where I just was kind of like, I just don't understand the dark tone mixed with the kind of sex comedy stuff, and then having that stuff be it collide at one point in such a honestly gross way, an effectively gross way. But it just I don't know, it just kind of made me feel a little confused at times in that sense. But I do think there's a lot here that's really good, and I do think that Emily Burgel has a real good control of this tone. Oddly enough, the way that she performs it, it just feels strangely natural for something that still has a lot of camp. Yeah,
she's the one who occupies both films, I think, completely naturally, at least in comparison to Jason London, who by the time you get to the finale with him and they're playing that tape of him saying "I love you" on the VHS tape that they're like rewinding, and he gets a sort of, he gets kind of, I guess, the bookend of the movie where he is the sort of epilogue where he's taking care of the dog and studying in college, and like CG glass breaks and he just looks sad, and you know, he's still having nightmares of Rachel the same way that like Amy Irving did of the original Carrie. Again, it was another one of those remember Carrie kind of, you know, blatant moments. But you know, still a fun movie. BenDavid, what's the rating? Can we get a 5? Can we get the BenDavid 5?
It's clearly a 5-star movie, but I want to clarify. Psycho 2 is a masterpiece. I like Psycho 2
great movie, actually,
more than Psycho. It's not better than Psycho, but I really, really love the script for 2. I think it's so well
Psycho
executed.
2 is amazing.
Psycho 2, I think, is like one of my favorite movies of all time. What we're watching today for me is a movie that should be terrible, and I really like. Like, I can't believe how much I like it. It's like a different kind of 5-star thing for me, where it's just like, I'm just glad this exists. Like, I'm glad, like, it got made for really crass reasons, but it's one of the big fun things about being a horror fan is getting a wild sequel. And this is one where it's like, if someone asked me to make this, I'd be like, what do you want me to do? Like, make Vertigo 2? What are you talking about? Like, why would you make a Carrie sequel? Are you insane? And then you watch it, you're like, fuck, they should make a Carrie sequel. Like, it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I like being proved wrong, where I'm like, this shouldn't exist. And I'm like, I'm glad it does. So on that level, I would give it 5 stars. Yes. Over-explained, but yeah.
I want a telepathic violent finale once a year, so they can keep remaking them.
It should be like when they had a Paranormal every year or a Saw every year. We should have one of these every year. But the real challenge, though, is figuring out the setup.
Can you make a good drama for an hour and 20 minutes?
And also, it is a real challenge. It's like, well, we can't do it at prom, so we can't do it at a party. You know, that's the real trick, is like, I was really, really glad they didn't repeat the prom thing. Like, they could have, and I was honestly, that's what I was expecting. I had no idea. I was like, I really like that they changed the location of it and the inciting thing. You know, I think it deserves, you know, a big high 5.
Hell yeah. Well, I think that's going to wrap it up for Carrie 2 there. You're going to want to stick around, though, because we're going to be back and we're going to be talking Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, very shortly here.
Forget everything you've seen, because this time the truth is scarier than fiction.
A brutal murder in the Black Hills discovered today. In the past year, the Black Hills area has been overrun with movie fans wanting to get a glimpse of where the Blair Witch Project was filmed.
All right, we are back, and we are talking Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2, the 2000 supernatural horror film written and directed by Joe Berlinger, co-written by Dick Beebe, and starring Kim director Jeffrey Donovan and Eric Delirchen, and a few others, as a group of both enthusiasts and students who decide to take a tour around Burkittsville, Maryland, where the original crew of witch hunters disappeared, taking a tour inspired by the movie, obviously, and experiencing the sort of same quote-unquote supernatural phenomenon and psychological unraveling as the description reads, only this time in a little bit more of a traditional 90s horror movie style, not found footage. This is our first time talking about true crime documentary filmmaker Joe Berlinger, who, alongside his collaborator Bruce Sinofsky, made some pretty acclaimed documentaries in the 90s, including Brothers Keeper and the Paradise Lost trilogy that effectively got the sort of West Memphis 3 teenagers who were sort of falsely accused of killing children in that sent the town into sort of hysterics because they were essentially these like goth-attired metalheads who looked like Satanists. Essentially, those documentaries got those kids off death row, and more recently has been making a lot of sort of direct-to-streaming true crime miniseries and movies, including a pretty popular one on Ted Bundy. People might have seen recently, but coming from a background in documentary is, I guess, what put him on the radar as an option. When the producers of the Blair Witch Project, Haxon Films, were trying to hastily put together a sequel to cash in on how successful the original film was. And Berlinger, I think, an interesting choice, and someone who came at the movie with an approach that I think should have made for a cool sequel, which was that he wasn't going to just copy it. He was going to do something different. He wasn't just going to do the same sort of found footage movie, but he was going to apply some of his techniques as a documentarian, including doing things like interviewing residents of the town, contemplating ideas, I think, of media manipulation and the effect of mysteries and disappearances and deaths on small towns is something he's thinking about a lot in this, and trying to create a sequel that took the original film as a real event that happened, or that some people think is fictional and other people think is real, and trying to sort of navigate the characters who think that. And the issue, and maybe BenDavid, did you end up finding your DVD that you were looking for that had the commentary on it?
I couldn't find it, but I went down a big rabbit hole and had a recall of all of it, basically based on interviews and stuff I was reading.
Because they've talked about this, but this was like one of the most, like, he had to go back and basically entirely restructure and reshoot and re-edit like the original movie that he had wanted to shoot, right? Well, is part of the idea here?
A little over a month before it came out, the studio decided to add a bunch of drastic reshoots and recut the movie, where originally it was completely linear and there was no flashbacks. You didn't see him at the asylum. Almost all of the horror elements or the really violent elements, or the little flashes of people being tied up on those things, those are all done weeks before it came out. They replaced all of his music, and then they kept cutting to the finale of people being, interviewed by the cop. So, we'll
that's maybe the worst choice that they make. It's the most boneheaded producer studio note I've ever heard of. Just hey, we have a movie that gradually builds to an interesting reveal. And what if you flash forward to it once every 5 minutes to kind of build the intrigue on, where are we going with this, rather than doing the thing it actually does, which is tell you exactly where this movie is going.
Yeah. So the simple thing, the context of the movie was they decided they wanted to have a Blair Witch movie out a year later. The filmmakers who made the first one and the producers of it said, we want to spend more time and get some distance from it and really figure this out. And they said, fuck you. We're going to be we're shooting in 3 months. All that's exactly true, except I don't think they literally said fuck you. It was a metaphorical fuck you. And they were this director came in pitching a different movie, thinking he was coming in to do that. And Artisan's we really want you to do Blair Witch 2. And he had to have a script 2 months later. And they were so preoccupied with taking Artisan public that they weren't really thinking about the movie. And what he pitched them, they shouldn't have made if they didn't want to do, which is what he wanted to do, was make a narrative movie that takes place in a world where the Blair Witch movie exists, but it's fake. You know, it's as if his premise was, what if a bunch of fans of this movie went to the place where the movie was shot and lost their minds, and then it's subjective about, you know, is there a supernatural element, or do they just have like mass psychosis? And why did they greenlight
It's a cool
that?
idea.
But why would anyone greenlight that? I love it as a viewer, but as like a studio designed to make money and follow up this juggernaut, that is such a weird take to do for a mainstream movie. And then a month before it's out, they try to fix it, and I think just they broke it. Like, I don't think this is ever a movie that would have been a gigantic hit, but they clearly tried to make it more of a mainstream horror movie and then made it neither thing, you know? It's like in this very weird zone between being kind of an artsy sequel and just being a down the middle populist sequel by virtue of just, I'm like, at that point, your marketing's already done. Your trailers are out and everything. Why not just put out the movie he made? They're both going to bomb. You know, it's like, I don't know. It's like that last minute sort of panicking of like, oh, we're going to make this more accessible. We're going to add a Marilyn Manson song and we're going to do this. And it's going to suddenly make this a commercial, you know, accessible movie. And I wish I could see his version, and I don't know even how I would feel about it, but I'm fascinated by every element of this movie, really.
Yeah, I will say when like it was introduced, and the opening credits are happening, and Marilyn Manson plays, and you know it's the kind of the heli shot over the forest and everything. I was just thinking, you know, tonally this is going to be just very similar to something like I don't know, like Wolf Creek and stuff like that, where it just feels like you have the people, the new metal. There is going to be violence. There's going to be a little bit of
they're already showing you the flashing of the gory, you know, ritualistic murders right off the beginning. Like they don't, even after showing you the opening, which I think has more interest in the opening text of it, where it was like the following is a fictionalized reenactment of events that occurred after the release of the Blair Witch Project and how it's public records. And like it starts, I think, in that realm of being like, we're gonna, you know, do something that is at least similarly ambiguous and kind of psychological and, you know, as that original film. And then immediately you just know that that's not true as soon as you get to those new metal asylum, you know, flashing that we were just talking about from the last film, and you get him in the straitjacketed and tubes are down his throat. Marilyn Manson's playing. There's a helicopter over the woods. There's witchy murders. And you're just like, this is a very different product.
The studio added that text at the last minute right before it came out, and I don't know what that helped. I don't know.
Well, yeah, because
it doesn't.
Are you talking about the one where it says like we've gathered these interviews and tapes from the first incident that happened?
Yeah, and then we did a dramatic reenactment of it. It's like, what? How?
Yeah,
I immediately, it's like, for a movie that I like a lot, I immediately was like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, what is
and
this?
then they go.
But I did love seeing my boy Roger Ebert up there, though, on the big screen.
Is awesome. That montage is it's so cool to repurpose the real life coverage of the movie in context of this. That's really cool. And doing the interviews at the town where he's like, here's the guy who's like making the stick figures at the witch store, and you know, which residents are annoyed about the reputation of the movie versus which ones are, you know, kind of taking advantage of it in some, you know, kind of fashion. And like that's the movie I feel like I could see that he wanted to make here, versus it's just so funny to have it cut from one to the other so suddenly. It's like the real danger when you're a filmmaker is that, you know, you can kind of warn people and tell them what your movie's going to be, and you don't always know if they're hearing you. Because he apparently was like, hey, I want the first 2/3 to have kind of almost a dark comedy, satirical feeling to it that just slowly starts to get a tiny bit more paranoid and a tiny bit more paranoid. But I just want it to feel like it's not a horror movie at all for like a really long time. And they're like, yeah, cool. and they watch it like, what the fuck? It's like, because that functionally...
Get Marilyn Manson and gore in there in the first 3 minutes as soon as possible.
But it was Witchcraft by Frank Sinatra was the opening credits song that he had there. And then they swapped it out for that. And again, I haven't seen it, so I don't know if it works, but there's like an intent behind those kind of choices. But one thing I just want to say about the opening to just get out of the way, and I like Jeffrey Donovan a lot, but and I hope he's not listening to this, is that so on the show Burn Notice, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Burn Notice, but anyway,
when I was younger,
Burn Notice, which is sick as hell. Donovan plays like a really smooth, cool spy type guy, and every episode he's like helping out some local person who got like the mob is like, oh, they're running me down and I can't keep my grocery store open. So he's like, I'm going to help you. And when he's doing it, he'll like play a character within the show. And when he's being Burn Notice, that's not his name, I'm just going to call him Burn Notice. When he's being Burn Notice, he's very good at it and very charming. But when he starts like playing a character within the show, it feels so kind of arch and very like there's no realism at all to what he's doing. And it's part of the charm of the show is when he does that, it's sort of like he suddenly is like doing an affectation and doing all this stuff. Immediately on this viewing, I'm like, this feels like one of his Burn Notice characters within the show. Like his performance as this guy who's unwell, there's like a meta quality to it to me where it feels just, I can really feel the acting. And I watched Blair Witch right before this.
It's like when Glenn Powell is dressing up as all the hitmen and hitmen or something like that, where you're just like...
Yes. That's sort of, to me, what this guy feels like. I feel like the Burn Notice guy is going undercover as like a Blair Witch tour guide.
That was super fan.
But the interesting thing about it right off the bat was I watched these movies back to back, and I think that the first one has like God-level performances because they feel real. They feel
they're so upsetting to watch.
Feel like they're uncomfortable dialogue. It feels like you're trapped with these people on the worst vacation of their lives. And the interesting thing about this movie, and maybe it's because it's his first narrative feature, I do think that there is a unevenness to the reality of the performances in this movie, where like some people in this movie feel kind of naturalistic, but then like the sheriff and Donovan, the movie that they're in, is like they're almost like they're like in a Rob Zombie horror movie. Like it feels like they should be in a very visually stylized movie because they're giving kind of stylized performances. And then other characters in this are kind of like going more for like a naturalism. And there is a weird contrast to the performances right out the gate because you're watching that first scene and it almost has a raw documentary feeling. But Donovan's performance is really fun though, because like he has a line where he's like, all these naysayers are coming by and they keep saying nay, I think is the line. I'm just like
that's crazy.
Like,
that's crazy that they say that.
I want to watch a whole movie about that guy, but it is immediately setting off kind of a weird contrasting feeling to this movie. Is like, are we trying to do a heightened movie? Or are we trying to do something that feels like it could happen? It's sort of in a weird zone there.
Yeah, there was a strange tone to this that I found I never really could latch on to fully. Like there's, obviously it has its moments where it's trying to ramp up the horror and this kind of like paranoid feeling and everything. But then you'll also have dialogue like with Erica, the Wiccan girl, where, she's talking about certain instances where it's like that really fucked up our image, talking about Wiccans. That just the way she says it made me laugh. There's also this moment with Donovan where we'll get to all these details, but at a certain point they wake up and all of their research and equipment is destroyed and all this, and there's these tapes that have been
he has an
hidden.
Incredible line.
And they do this thing where he says like he's like,
we must have fallen asleep. Asleep?
Yeah.
It's like we blacked out.
Yeah, it's those. I think that's what it is. It's the sudden 0 to 100 deliveries. Like he does another one where the tapes they're discovered, and then he's like, "Those are my fucking tapes," or something like that. And the way that Berlinger kind of zooms in on his face, so the framing is just him and the whoever the other character is that he's kind of yelling at. But because he does this like side turn and then screams at her and there's a hard cut to it, it just made me laugh. And so the tension feels like, for me anyway, it was always undercut by like a weird delivery or something that just felt like it wasn't like completely tonally captured the
Those
right
are
way.
the moments where I feel what Berlinger would have maybe described to you as the satirical element of the movie. Like when that Steven guy goes, "Newsflash, everybody, that was just a movie."
Right.
It's exaggerated in a way that you do kind of go, these aren't, you can't compare the performances at all to the original, even though you have to, because the movie compares itself to the original throughout the whole thing, unfortunately. But
and I guess we're supposed to watch this as like a traditional film rather than think that these people are real anyway. So I can get that. It's just that, I don't know, I felt like it was always wrestling itself with that. It was always fighting itself.
Well, I mean, I think that's...
Yeah, I mean,
the quick sequel model is like, okay, we can do a Jason movie quick because there are core ingredients of this that we can repeat, and then we can color within the lines between that. You can't do a quick sequel to Blair Witch Project because it's such a one-to-one, that's the wrong terminology, but it's such a unique thing. You can't just do, well, we're just going to have a bunch of people go in the woods again and then get lost, and then this thing's going to happen, and we'll just do that every year. And they tried to rush a sequel, a really big swing sequel with like a first-time narrative director, that is a really complicated tonal movie to do. And there's just so much of this that it's like, it's just all a big swing, and I can't also always tell what the intent was because of like the changes in post. Does that make sense?
Yeah. That becomes the issue for sure, because you do wonder, like, you're like, well, Berlinger obviously directed these performances, right? So like he must have intended this, but maybe they're not working because of how they've been cut together and how they've been organized. And like you definitely have to think about that the entire time, even when you're watching the early goings, and some of the way he's directing these people maybe does suit a trashier, weirder new metal version of these kind of events, like with him on the when we are introduced to every one of these people on the tour, and you do get Jeffrey being like, this is the BlairWitchHunt.com, and here you're possibly losing your own souls in the process while we're sleeping on the same soil and walking on the same path and all of this. And you're introduced to which is, I think, hilarious, the character who clearly is the Berlinger stand-in, the graduate student Steven, who's like writing his thesis on whether the Blair Witch was a case of hysteria or history, I think is the name, with his pregnant girlfriend Tristan. And then you have the pair of girls introduced into the back as well. Erica, the sort of Wiccan or witch character, played by Erica Learson from the Texas Chainsaw remake, also a few years later. She's hilarious because she appears to find witchcraft just like very sexy, and also is a lot of like, my culture is not your costume. Is like kind of like,
you need to respect it.
And then she gets that line too where she criticizes how unbelievable the original film was because they're so scared and none of them have sex with each other. She's like, that just wouldn't happen. Like that's, you needed to put that
to an orgy.
That's how it's fictional. And then the last is Kim, played by Kim Director, the great Spike Lee regular who appeared in like He Got Game and Summer of Sam and Bamboozled, Inside Man. She is the goth girl psychic we're introduced to, literally smoking on a grave in a cemetery and having other characters in the film like call her like Elvira based on how she dresses.
And she also has she has one of those I guess they all have that kind of meta quality in which that like they're looking for the Blair Witch in some way, but she says that she just goes on the tour because she really likes the movie. So just a film fan.
She's just like us.
Yeah, exactly. she's just like us. I found her to be probably for some reason I found her to be the most like fitting character in all of this. I don't know exactly why. Like her performance for some reason didn't make me feel as jarred every once in a while, or
well, because
whiplash.
she shot like a more exaggerated goth girl character, but the process of her character is to get more and more scared and more natural, I think, as the movie goes on. At one point, like being more, you know, she's scared of the hallucinations she's seeing. She's reacting to the strangeness of their events. I mean, one of the buildups they get to when they keep going back to these interrogation scenes that make a lot more sense when you realize they were all supposed to be at the end of the film, but like there's a point where, like, you know, the cartoon sheriff like has her like wipe her makeup off and stuff like that, and you know, these were the gradual arc of this character, I think, makes a lot more sense when you view the performative nature of maybe how she's a goth girl and then the actual scary situation she gets put in, and it puts her through the ringer. And I think in the original version of the film she would absolutely make perfect sense, I think.
Yeah. And it was fun to watch, like, both of their, you know, the Wiccan girl is very heavy in believing in nature and what's around you. And then the goth girl is just a complete nihilist that hates everything. So watching them go back and forth was kind of fun every once in a while. They do, as they get drunker, the dialogue, and I think purposely so, becomes like they become more and more insufferable versions of themselves a little bit, like just pretentious in the way that they're like poetically trying to speak. I
loved Jeffrey filming the two girls and just finding them so hot that he's pitches them on two different documentaries. He's like, Wiccan, a way of life. I can see you as like the star. And then he does the same thing with goth as well.
Yeah. This, you know what, this, and then in this moment, because I guess this does eventually lead to a huge thing in the finale, but when the opposite group, the other tour group turned up and they were like, "Hey, this is our territory. You can't be touring right now. We got this for the
satire
day."
like that feels so.
It feels like that scene in Shaun of the Dead when like the same crew of people pass them.
Totally.
Yeah.
It does, and that's the thing is like there are these moments where that would happen. Some of the dialogue I was just talking about, and I was like, it's funny and it's entertaining and it's genuinely funny and it seems purposely funny. But again, the whiplash effect of like just I think it's the same thing I had with Carrie, right? Where it's like I have this tone of the original that I'm so locked into because I'm such a fan, and then I go into this and now they're like it almost feels like parody at a certain point. And it was hard for me to wrap my head around that, even once they started to do more of the paranoid, supernatural, what's happening with us right now.
Well, it's funny because the other comparable thing about these two movies for me is that, well, I'll get into the slow burn thing later, but on your point there is, I feel like Carrie 2 is a movie where by the time you get to the end, it feels sort of a piece, you know, like it just kind of takes some adjusting to it. I've seen Blair Witch 2 a lot, and most of that stuff, it will always clash, you know. Does that make sense? Where it's just like, I like this movie a lot, but it does, the tonal shifts always still feel jarring. You know, it's not like I adjust to it on repeat viewings. It still does feel like you're watching three different movies at the same time, which is interesting, but also a problem. You know?
Yeah, because I think what happens is when you hit the actual satirical moments, they are genuinely funny and decently like well written in that sense. But then when it comes time to get that tension, I think that some of that gets undercutted. And there were moments that I could tell that I don't think that this was supposed to be funny. And I started to laugh just due to certain deliveries and like the way that it had to be edited together, probably because this was such a hack job by the end of it. I had a lot of moments where I went, that is genuinely funny. And I can tell that he set up the framing that way. And then there'd be other moments where I'm like, that couldn't have possibly been supposed to be funny. It had to have been like, especially the violent moments that we'll get to in the finale. I don't want to spoil them yet, so that's why I'm kind of weaving around them. But
when I was talking about why I like Carrie 2 is I love how long it holds off before it becomes a horror movie. And I think the attempt to make this more of consistently a horror movie, you know, like with the way it was changed in post, creates real tonal issues because you're jumping in and out of these things that I think they're trying to decide. They're trying to manufacture tension in post by like, being like, oh, I'm so worried about where this is going because I know later he's going to be interrogated by a sheriff. It's actually
right.
It's destructive as opposed to helpful, I think, like to do that in this case where like I see why they thought it would help the movie, but it actually just makes me feel like, well, I was in the zone with these people and I'm trying to enjoy this, but now you're making me impatient for people to start dying when it keeps like doing that thing.
Yeah, like I didn't mind it when it was just them retracing the steps of like the original characters from the film and like getting the DV camcorders out to film it, and he's just trying to entertain this group of people and doing one of the things I liked early on was when he gets to that giant tree sticking out of the center of the foundations of like the rundown house where that you see in the first film. He's like, I swear this was never here before. And they go, yeah, fuck you. You're just like, this is some cynical, like, salesman shit you're trying to pull on us. And, that's not actually anything bizarre or supernatural happening. And like, that's all you need to like imply that. We don't need to like during them getting around the bonfire and just drinking beer and smoking weed to then intersplice all of the, sort of murder stuff that they're going to be doing and the new metal needle drops and and then going ahead and occasionally flashing backward and forward to the interrogations and which we later obviously find out is a bunch of tourists have been killed on tape, but you're sitting there going like, okay, where are the tourists killed on tape? Where is Jeff as I think you assume early on, like maybe even the lone survivor, and they talk about the Sheriff Cravens is like there's blood in your van that matches the tourists and all of that, which I actually don't think even makes sense with what we eventually see because the van gets fucked up and no one was killed in the van, but I don't know, it's fine.
That tree scene I think is really effective because I can't tell if he's bullshitting them or not. Like, is he just saying this because he thinks it'll scare them? Or was there no tree there before? Like, I think it's like really well executed. And that is the stuff that I like the most in this movie. And I really like that approach, which is like, is this guy a huckster? Or is he insane? Or is he actually worried about these things? Like, I think that's a really interesting approach to it, is that your tour guide is he an unreliable narrator or is he just trying to give you the most bang for your buck?
Yeah.
I do like the idea of the unreliability that I don't know. I have to imagine was a big part of the original film. But again, it's hard to, sift through this and figure out what's what. But I do like that idea because the academic character is the one who kind of voices this stuff where they talk about, why are you applying rational thought to myth and perception is reality? And the idea of like video is the truth. And there's a point in this film where they keep returning back to these tapes that got shot, to Jeffrey's tapes that shot while they were blacked out or possibly possessed or whatever it was that happened to them the night that they get just super drunk, and there's a bunch of bizarre editing and zooming and shaking and they're all just making out with each other and having what looks like as Jamie put it, an awesome forest orgy until suddenly you're like, maybe they took it a little too far.
Maybe a little bit. Another interesting thing just to do with like how they edited this and how you're supposed to kind of take in, I guess, the upcoming violence and the visions that they show you is that the goth girl does have like specific visions of the murder. And then, there's like a moment where she stares at an owl that's looking at her that becomes an image later. But I found it interesting
her
that
eating the owl and then eating the like KFC or whatever.
Yeah, right. But I found it interesting that they do have her be a specific vehicle for the visions, but then at the same time, again, when they're editing the movie itself, they just kind of put them throughout the film as well that are disconnected to her character.
Yeah, then everybody has them, and then none of them ended up true, and they were all just going insane and killing each other because the videotape captured what actually happened.
Right. And I guess...
But also maybe the Blair Witch possessed them all and then framed them all?
Yeah, it could have... Yeah, that's the thing, too. The van thing, what I interpreted as when you saw like how smashed it was or whatever, it felt as if the
Blair Witch got drunk and went out for the night.
Yeah. But I guess it was like that because we eventually get a reveal of like what the subjective think the scene that we saw previously is not the scene we actually saw, and the reality is what you see in the finale. So I guess I thought that when she did the minor crash, it was, you know, that was a vision, or that was a false memory or whatever. And then when you see the actual mangled truck, that's kind of, I guess, the real thing that happened. But it's hard to say.
Yeah, and I think the device of the movie structurally is a really good idea, to spend the whole movie seeing these people do things through their perspective, and then in the end, when we see the tapes, see what actually happened, and then have them be confronted with the reality of what happened. And like, that's like a really good haunting idea that I think gets kind of neutered a little bit.
It gets lost in how they've assembled
structure thing, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, I think that doing the non-linear stuff, it dulls that impact that the ending would have. And I still think it works and I really like it. But, you know, jumping around and then also seeing the tapes at the end and then having like these like weird flashes of horror and stuff, I think it kind of fucks up. It
was honestly just too much. It kind of confused my brain. I was like, what am I watching?
Well, yeah, but then also,
is this the tape? Is this a hallucination?
But since it makes you implicitly not trust what you're seeing, that makes the impact of seeing what actually happened later not as much of a shock. Is because you're already not really believing anything anyway. So when you see the tapes of what actually happened, you're like, okay, well, I didn't trust what I was seeing before, I guess, in the first place, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, they show their hand.
A lot of
too
this
much
movie
prior.
is also hiding out at Jeff's place, which I will say is kind of a fun little bit of production design. This like rundown industrial factory that he's turned into his BlairWitchHunt.com merch assembly line, but also like kind of like a sick like new metal loft.
Yeah,
at the same time.
and they do, and because of that, it allows them to do slightly more over the top things. Like at one point, I think it's the academic, he comes out where there's like a bridge connecting from the forest to this actual, you know, factory hangout place, and the bridge collapses because he sees a ghost, and then he just like hangs there, and you know, they have to help him, and it just feels like such a giant, it feels like an action beat almost that you wouldn't expect from something like Blair Witch. And the only reason they go there is because like literally when they wake up, they were like, oh, a bunch of weird shit happened overnight. Like the thesis research is like shredded and it's raining on them like snow. Jeff's cameras are both broken. The tapes recovered in the same spot under the rocks as the original cameras were. Tristan has a bloody miscarriage. We get all of that hilarious kind of angry overacting between all of them, trying to figure out those fucking tour group dickweeds fucking ripped us off, man. And like all that kind of stuff. And they spend the rest of the movie literally trying to confirm or not confirm, did something happen last night? Like almost like they're in a hangover movie. Like, what did we do? Put the pieces together.
and also Jeffrey? did something supernatural occur? And you just get confused because they're like, well, I believe so. It's a Blair Witch movie. But at the same time, I think it is definitely a very, you know, like interesting thing that they could do with these characters. I just do think that how much of the movie, because of how they've structured this in post, does mean that you are waiting for them to get interrogated and you're sitting there being like, okay, they're hallucinating stuff around like this house, and they keep hallucinating stuff around this house. And I did sit there the whole time being like, okay, are they gonna kill someone, or is the sheriff going to show up, or is something going to happen here? Because I'm sitting there waiting for it to happen while they're having, you know, the moments that you expect to happen in a movie like this of the, you know, they woke up with what are the rashes, and do these rashes mean we're marked for death, as kind of like the Wiccan, you know, Erica says at one point, and you know, Steven at one point sees a ghost girl walking backwards. There is something to do with like the Coffin Rock massacre or something, and a bunch of like old-timey ghost children that they keep seeing are almost running over with a car.
Almost, I guess, you know, is that implying like a different history? Did they mention that in the first one? I haven't seen it in a few years.
Maybe there's an actual mythology that's inspiring all of this that's not the fictional Blair Witch mythology. I'll be honest, I just got a little confused the entire time I was watching this section of the movie, even if there were moments where I could see where they could would work. Like, I like when Tristan confesses about having a dream where she hurt the baby and then going, you know, she's so sad that she miscarried because, you know, she knows that he wanted it, and she felt like internally maybe her feelings about it were what did that. And, you know, that was again sort of the hallucination versus reality thing kind of clicking in, and then doing the trashier version of that, the weird, like, strange sex dream fantasy of Erica massaging him and then clawing his chest open like a werewolf or something like that. Like, and it kind of goes between these two.
And those that fantasy moment I got a little confused by too, because it appeared once it ends, they are back at the opposite ends of the table, and it feels like they both experienced it. But it also, in that moment where it's happening, it feels like he's making like a conscious choice and wants to do that thing. And with her, I'm like, and because she does the more murderous thing where she scratches him and like his chest opens and everything. And I was like, so was this like a desire, or was this more like, you know, you're just getting put into a fucked up headspace because you're being haunted or possessed or whatever it is? She's
a Wiccan. She just thinks that's hot.
Yeah, there it is.
I think that's, I think that's kind of her character.
I think it's a good example of just the movie in a nutshell, which is there's movies like that I love because they really like stick the landing on the intention of what they were doing, and there's movies that I love because like all the ideas are really cool, but they don't really come together. Like, it's a very cool idea that the two of them are hallucinating the same thing at the same time. And then what does that mean if that's the case? Does that mean something else fucked up is going on here? But then it falls apart when you're discussing it in the way that you just did, where you're kind of like, well, wait, so what actually, but then why is, you know, and so, but it's
you just have to accept collective delusion, group hysteria. That's all it is. That's all that they're suggesting.
Yeah. And that's enough for me to enjoy a scene. But also, it would be really cool if there's a version of this where, you know, 2 + 2 = 4, you know, where like these ideas kind of added up to sort of a cohesive, you know, either thematic thing or mythology thing.
Right. Yeah. And there is there is an argument to be made that, again, you know, this whole experience that they're having is supposed to be very confusing and disorienting and subjective and whatever. But there is still, you know, there's plenty of movies that do that still make you feel as if you're kind of like
they're doing it on purpose.
Yeah. Whereas some of this makes me just feel genuinely confused, and not in this way that I'm like, oh, maybe I'm paranoid. Maybe I'm, you know, Blair Witch is coming after me or whatever. It just, it felt as if, you know, there was a lot of really good ideas that kind of just get mashed up. And in certain moments it really does work, but then other moments you're just left completely confused.
I felt that a lot while going through the section where they are just going crazy in this half factory, half loft. And they're, you know, I liked moments, for example, like when they're reviewing the tapes and they are going through the tapes and they're going, damn, we had a crazy ass party last night. And it takes a long time for someone to suggest playing it backwards so they actually see the crazy ass party that they're happening. Right. Jeff rocking out to Dragula is a great moment too, while he's, you know, going through that footage. And I think Kim at one point like flips through and finds a dossier that has like all of their character bio information on it that I don't know is ever actually explained, because he goes, I don't know where that came from. I don't know what that is at all. You know, like this doesn't make any sense. And at one point they suggest Erica talks about having a pastor for a father who they call, and the pastor denies she even exists or something like that. There's so many just like strange little details that I have to imagine in the one where this is a gradual descent into paranoid absurdity, that it all feels more of a piece with each other, rather than a collection of strange details that just disorient you and make you go, okay, now she's driving to go get him beer and coffee, and you know, she has a weird altercation, she almost crashes into ghost children, you know, then she grabs like a nail file and it has blood on it and you don't really understand where that came from.
You undercut like the sense of escalation of like the unsettling moments by also having that non-linear stuff and all the editorial things and like the flashes of horror, because you should feel like the frog in a pot of boiling water or whatever, where it just starts to reach like a fever pitch of everything being a little bit of a mind fuck. And right now it's like not really calibrated to, you know, do that. Like, I think it's really destructive to ever see him in the asylum, because like it makes you just have to lean into the fact that the guy's insane, as opposed to being like, wait, so is he nuts? Are we worried about this guy? But it's like you see him in an asylum and you see a sheriff being like, you murdered people, there's blood in your van. I'm like, well, there's going to be blood in his van. I know he's insane. Like, you know, it's you don't get to have the fun of just kind of being worried about where things are going or wondering what it's building to. You're like, okay, well, that's what it's going to be. And that can work in a movie, like that kind of structural thing. But here, I think it has to be part of the design. I think deciding that's what it is later rarely works, because I think that he probably would write the movie differently and do different things if that was the intention, you know? Because I think you would make it so it's all a misdirection, and that guy is like a really good dude and he's been like framed, or the other people are evil. Like, there's just different choices I think you would make, especially because he's not the only guy there at the end. So once they start jumping forward and then there's other characters who are still alive at the end.
As soon as they revealed he wasn't like the lone survivor, I got actually more confused.
Well, it actually is. I think it's the biggest mistake that they make in terms of changes is it's scarier to think he's the only guy alive at the end. And the second, you know, other people in the group are alive,
that he was unreliable.
Yeah, it just sort of, there's less, you're just like, oh, you're like, oh, okay, so just only a couple of them die? Like, you know, there's like, you're like, so does one of them die? What are we talking about here? Are they all okay? Is it animal blood? Like you're getting, it's less scary.
It takes quite a long time before the sheriff calls them and says, oh, it was the other tour group they ran into that they went and murdered during their crazy demonic witchcraft orgy or whatever.
But when he's waving while being on TV, that is some top tier goofball shit. When he's just like,
phone call,
hey, look at me, I'm on the TV.
I multiple times in my notes, I just keep putting comedy ? Because it was like when that moment where he calls him and they cut from inside the headquarters or whatever, where they're getting that news, to the sheriff yelling at him, to the news.
I mean, everything to do with the sheriff, Lanny Flaherty, is a comedy.
It's
like
hilarious.
He might as well just be in like Natural Born Killers again or something, you know, like
I'm repeating myself and I'm sorry for it, but it's another problem with the structure change is like, he's a fun addition to a movie, but like having him right out the gate in such a big kind of outsized performance really undercuts the movie, because like a guy like that showing up at the midpoint of a movie is like a fun injection of energy, but when you just keep cutting to him, it's sort of like he's like, I'm in a movie. You're like, okay.
He has one of my favorite lines when they do these, and again, they're not great the way they use them, but when they cut back to these interrogations before the actual reveal of why they're being interrogated happens, the sheriff does a line to the goth girl that's so funny, where he goes, "You think your makeup and black hair gives you power?" I lost my mind.
But I want her to say it does, and like her eyes start glowing, and then she levitates, and he's like, "Oh fuck!"
I didn't know.
Oh my god.
She's like, "Good guess."
Yeah, he does feel straight out of a Rob Zombie movie. That was a great comparison. Like it's a total exaggerated performance that doesn't make any sense, especially when you get to the end of the movie. And the other actors have been reduced to trying to, I think, play it more naturalistic, maybe with the exception of Jeffrey. But I think specifically with like Steven and Kim, when you get into the final interrogations with them and they're like showing them the footage, like honestly, Steven's reaction to looking at the footage of him killing his own wife, I thought was kind of upsetting. And I kind of went that, and the her being pushed off the balcony and like snapping her neck, and him being like, that's not like what happened, like that's not how it worked, like you've like edited this or you fucked with this. And you know, despite being the guy who said like video was the truth at one point or whatever, right? And you know, like those were the moments where I could see the vision of what the good movie this was supposed to be.
Well, it's like if you made a Blair Witch movie where the first 2/3 is a normal movie, and then in the end they watch the found footage. Like intellectually, that's a very interesting idea to me. Is we're watching like a movie where all these guys think that their choices they're making make sense and all this stuff, and then you see these raw, awful moments, at the ending that they're confronted with. That's a really good idea, you know. And I think this, as I've said, I think this movie is a collection of really interesting kind of high concept ideas that, and you shouldn't have to make this movie in a matter of months, like in a rush, something this sort of complicated narratively, you know.
Yeah, and if you greenlight it, you should greenlight it and stick to it. You shouldn't decide we are going to bend it and break it and do all these things to it to turn it into a movie we did not greenlight.
Yeah, and I have to like you were saying, Josh, that actor when he is breaking down and seeing those clips, I think he's really good. Like, it's incredibly expressive. I mean, the dude is just shattered. It's just that with everything surrounding it, it does feel like a very the only time that really happens where you see a character kind of break down in that sense. And so for me, it still felt a little bit out of place or comedic, not because I don't think his acting is good or his response is genuine in that sense. It makes total sense. But when you get to the two different subjective visions of what they have, of what they thought happened compared to what they see on the tapes, I have to say both of them kind of made me laugh, where the first one, where she's just basically going like, you don't got any balls, you're not a man, like just attacking him in these, I don't know, I found it to be kind of just petty and like really superficial attacks or whatever.
Like, you're talking about in the version where like the wife is meant to be possessed and is meant to be like the one who led them in their like crazy forest witchcraft orgy where they shredded the research and started touching each other and themselves and getting naked with skulls and torches and grabbing sharp objects and running into the forest to go and massacre the tourists, like in all the imagery we've seen throughout.
Yeah, and he gets called a bitch, and then he pushes her, and she has already put the neck around her, or the rope around her neck, so she dies. And then in the one where he's it's exposed that what actually happened, he ends up just killing her. They were just brutally
chasing her around, scared, right?
And they do this. I will say this: the push and then the body leaving the platform and then getting hanged looks really violent and really real, to be honest. But then he fucking turns to the camera and he goes, "Fucking witch." And
witch.
Lost my mind. I thought that was so funny, and it took out all the tension of that death for me. So it was like, and then he's bawling his eyes out in the interrogation room and saying like, "Look at the goddamn tapes" and shit. I just, I don't know. I couldn't latch onto it with I think the amount of intensity they wanted me to feel, but I was entertained. You know, I enjoyed it. It was just, I don't think it was for the reason they were presenting it as.
I'd really
whether
like
or not
to
that
see,
matters, I don't know.
One of the biggest reasons why I wish I could see his cut is that his editor, the original editor who cut his movie, is like cut the limey and like Lost in Translation and all these really sophisticated, subtle movies. And I'm just, I have to imagine there was a big difference. Like, you know, I just don't see why else you would hire someone like that. You know, and it's
well, and also before they put System of a Down and Rob Zombie and Queens of the Stone Age and fucking Nickelback on the soundtrack, Carter Burwell was doing the score for the Coens. Speaking of Blood Simple,
and he's still credited. And it's just all
they just don't use much of it that I could tell.
Yeah, it's just really interesting, and you know, you never know how much you're like projecting on it with the assumption or whatever, but that is also the fun part about it too. It's like, if I had directed this movie, I'd forever be like, you know, my movie was a masterpiece, but you'll never find out. And then someone puts it out, you're like, oh fuck. It's like there's sort of a story I'd heard. There was like I'll be vague, but there's like a long delayed movie starring an actor. And it didn't come out for like several years because of like weird financing issues. And that person got cast in a bunch of stuff because their agent kept saying, you know, if that had come out, they would have won an Oscar. And everyone's like, oh, wow, because you can't prove them wrong. So the person worked a lot, and then the movie came out and was just like, oh no, they're not good.
What a terrible performance.
But that's one of my favorite things. So
that's
there's
awesome.
a documentary about the 13th Warrior. And at the end of it, John McTiernan, who's a god to me, someone says something to him at the end about like his version before they changed it. And he explains all of it. And he's like, I can't definitely say that it's better than this one. I mean, I think it is, but maybe if they put it out, you'd watch it and like this one more. Like he's like very just like, fuck it about it, which I really admire, because he's not like going to bat for it being like, this was my masterpiece. He's like, I liked it more and they took it away from me. But I can't guarantee you would. But I thought that was just a very charming way to talk about it, because I'm sure it was better before Michael Crichton redirected John McTiernan. That's my gut guess.
Oh, God.
Michael Crichton's way too tall to be a director. Like, how does he even see through the viewfinder? I don't understand.
Yeah, he should just keep writing. I'm going to bring this up every single time he comes up. Jamie, what's that Michael Douglas movie that he wrote? Disclosure. He needs to write more disclosures.
Yeah. I love how that's the one. I can never remember movie names, but Disclosure, I hit it
Jamie
every
remembers
time
it
you
every
ask
time.
me. Yeah, I'm like, Disclosure. Love that film.
I always forget because it's so generic.
It should be called Email. Because the entire finale is doing like Lawnmower Man style ways to write emails to each other. It's like the two best scenes of emailing in movie history are that and the first Mission Impossible, which I think is truly a perfect movie, except when he's just like typing in random email addresses like job 14 at this thing. It's like very much no one involved had ever used a computer before. But Michael Crichton was always like, there's like a 200-page section of Congo that's all about sending an email. Like, it's like, why are we doing this? Like, what is going on? But he was just really fascinated by stuff that also he didn't understand. I'm really glad we're talking about Disclosure.
There should have been, he should have been allowed to do a draft of Blair Witch 2, and we could have had Jeffrey Donovan answering BlairWitchHunt.com like emails and like looking and looking at reviews of his tour.
Well, but then we'd have to have Sam Neill doing the Jeffrey Donovan part, but in the same kind of third act of In the Mouth of Madness hysteria. We're really going to have to just mix all of these things together now.
See, and there's an example of the gradual hysteria that I feel like I would have just, there's a version of this. And you know what? I thought a little bit about Prince of Darkness too, with the ensemble group dynamic. And there was something to this idea, I think. And I couldn't believe how disoriented and how frustrated I was by accident in a movie that I think could have been disorienting and frustrating in a really productive and rewarding way, and seemed like Berlinger could have done that. I don't know. Even we basically talked it all through except for the part where the guy goes, that tape is wrong. That tape is bullshit. And you get the sheriff going, now I ain't no documentary filmmaker, but it appears we have a case of violent art inspiring real life violence.
Once again. Once again.
What would have been a good Blair Witch 2 is that character making a documentary about this. That's what that would be a movie I would watch.
These crazy movie obsessed kids out there and just committing ritualistic murders and getting drunk and smoking the Mary Jane.
Another funny little thing that they include too was like just the fact that in the beginning Erica is so concerned about like the history of witches and how people view them as evil and how that's bad for their image and everything. And then all of this happens. And in the newsreel, I think they specifically say that they were both into witchcraft. So the bad publicity just continues. And I just thought that was kind of funny and ironic.
They get a bad rap, the Wiccan culture.
Damn it.
But yeah, and unfortunately, I don't think Blair Witch 2 is doing too much more for them in that department. But if we're pivoting towards reductive rating round, this one definitely ended up in the 2 territory for me. But I was sad about that. I'll be honest.
I'll say that.
Because there was stuff in here that was good. And when you read about the movie, you go, oh, there was a good movie in here. There are good ideas in here. The vision, there are moments where you see the vision, I think, pretty thoroughly. And it's so difficult, I think, to divorce them from the decisions that were made to make this a more commercial and trashy new metal, like goth girl, almost slasher horror movie that the producers or the production company just got incredibly cold feet about, and we're like, we need to remove huge swaths of Carter Burwell music to put Marilyn Manson in there, and we need to re-edit this so that the few structural design choices made in the shooting do not work in any capacity. And and I think, BenDavid, you said it correctly immediately up front, which was that there's signs of a good movie that was just thoroughly broken. And that's what it feels like you're watching. And it just makes it more disorienting and more frustrating as you're watching it go on. Because it's the opposite of the Carrie thing for me, because Carrie, I spent the whole thing being like, the moments where you're doing the cynical stuff don't work, and or like the producer mandated sequel stuff doesn't work, until suddenly it very much does at the end, and you can enjoy that separately as a trashy and weird commercial slasher. Yeah, I don't get that feeling when this gets into that stuff in here. It just feels like it ruins what should have been what they should have stuck to, which was a more meta and intellectual and kind of thought through idea by an actually skilled documentary filmmaker who came up with a cool concept of, what if the movie is fake, but what if people thought it was real? And we then had them go through a similar sort of collective hysteria, a group delusion, but about movies and about, and I think that that's a cool idea until you just, you completely butcher it in the edit. So it's a very, very frustrating watch, and one of the more boneheaded, like, studio or whatever distribution notes I've ever seen applied to a movie in this way, despite the fact that this movie does include the Blair Witch throwing a sick Queens of the Stone Age party and then framing everyone for murder after, which is, it sounds much weirder and cooler than when you actually end up watching the movie.
It is funny that when they reveal the orgy, even the orgy seems like it's supposed to be like evil and everything, and I'm like, I don't know, it seems like they're having a damn good camping trip until they just murder everybody. But it's I'm kind of in the same boat. I think that this, I do see like what the director was trying to do here, and you can see the movie within this film that he made. It's just that you can, every time a studio note just goes right onto the screen, it's very noticeable. And at first, like, I didn't know about the switches when I initially watched the film. So when it first came on and, Marilyn Manson pops up, and I'm like, okay, well, we're back in this era. That's fun. I enjoy this. And they started doing the flashes of the murder. And I'm like, okay, they're just trying to set a tone here. Because, again, I don't know what's about to happen. But then when they start to intersplice it the entire time, it does start to make you feel like, oh, we're just leading to this very specific thing that does end up happening. And it does kind of ruin that tension. And it is strange just because the script itself feels like that's the whole point. Like, you're kind of supposed to feel.
Yeah, I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with new metal murder orgies, like, inherently. You can do one. And you can do it well, I think.
Except these characters clearly have too much kind of like, they're basically too Puritan to be okay with what they did, so they start murdering people. Like, they feel really guilty about the fact that they had an orgy, and it makes them snap and become murderers, which is a pretty good log line for a movie, I guess.
Absolutely. But I don't have much to add to what you said. I do think that some of the performances I do have fun with, again, because of the post edits and just what he had to do. I think some of them end up not working, but I can imagine they would if they just let him direct the movie he wanted to direct. It's one of those things that's just kind of a shame that the studio did such a hack job. But that being said, there's also some interesting things because of that. That it's whether or not maybe they'll work for you, but it's a fascinating film, that's for sure. Especially to being a sequel to the Blair Witch and it being just so different. There is something to be said about that, I think.
It's fascinating enough that BenDavid has watched it how many times? What was this?
So probably, I have no clue. The last time I'd seen it was in 2019 at the Alamo in LA, and they played a print. Actually,
He went to go see a print of it. Like, that's commitment.
I think I've seen it twice in theaters as in like a repertory way. I've probably maybe seen it like 6 times.
Sweet.
Yeah, like
what is the changes as you by the 5th time? Is there something that like switches up to you, or
no? It's really
you just like more.
I just like the movie. It's the kind of movie that you give enough time so you kind of forget the details, and then you check it out again to see if it improves or not. And for me, I couldn't even give this a star rating if someone put a gun to my head, because I don't. It exists outside of kind of a normal thing like that, because I really enjoy this movie, and I think it's really interesting, and I'm glad, like, I think it's really dope, but it's also broken, and I don't really know how to apply a number scale to like the pros and cons of it, because there's like, I think just it's like a really interesting swing, and some of the ideas don't work because they were like kind of too complicated to pull off, and then some don't work because the studio meddled with it. And at the end of the day, though, like, it doesn't really matter. I'm just glad that someone took a big swing on a sequel to this, because it's like just a wild approach to a Blair Witch sequel. Like, in a million years, if someone had asked me for like what a sequel to that should be, had this not existed, had I not seen it, just like if someone's like, hey, what would you do? I never would have thought of any of this shit. And it's just a lot of really cool ideas, regardless of how well they work. so that's, I don't, so I wouldn't even know how to say, like, whether it's, like, it's 2.7. I don't know. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't know totally. How you even, I would, if I watched his cut, I probably would have like some objective take on how well that works, because you at least get to see the intention throughout the whole thing and how it feels like, if it feels cohesive on a scene by scene basis. But the way it's constructed now, it feels like a very crass attempt to kind of make something weird more accessible.
Yeah.
But it's cool, man. I think, and I'm really glad I forced you guys to talk about it this much. That's the real coup here.
I mean, that's the thing. Even if I don't end up liking something like this overall, anytime it's this strange and unique, I'm never mad. It is something that I think is kind of individual in its own. Like there's nothing else really like it in that sense. So
I mean, there's a real value to a movie like this, where like how much it all works is kind of not the point. It's just genuinely interesting. Like, I find like I could be very defensive of Carrie 2 in a sense where I'm like, you just got to meet that movie halfway. I think it's a fucking really good ride. I think that it deserves way more credit than it has. Blair Witch 2, my argument is that it's very interesting. If someone's like, I hated that, I'm not going to get in a fight with them. If someone's like, Carrie 2 is a piece of shit, I'm like, watch it again, man. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
you watch your mouth.
Yeah, it's like, but again, Psycho, it's like there's the range of Psycho 2, which is the perfect version of trying to do a sequel to a like masterwork. And then there's the, hey, that was cool, they tried it. And then there's a, what the fuck? There's like a long, and I wish someone would, it's like, I've never seen the two Jakes. I'm really curious. I've always been curious about it, but I'm kind of afraid to watch it. Isn't that what it's called? The Chinatown sequel that Nicholson directed?
The one directed by Nicholson, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I think the ultimate one is probably Blues Brothers 2000 of like, did we need that? What was that? Right. But the music's really good. It's like that.
I am interested that this did make money. I saw on the wiki it was like 15 million budget and it made $45 million or something, which I was kind of surprised to see.
It's a really good example though of how we got fucked by streaming. Is that movie made, I think they said sold like $30 million worth of DVDs, and that's just sales, not rentals. And we used to be able to have weirder swings and people wouldn't get too worried about it because there's like other revenue streams that would kind of cancel it out. And everyone's really afraid to make like a Blair Witch 2 now. But if there was still DVD, like they'd be like, we tried. But now it's like, oh no.
Every Blair Witch fan will go to the video store and rent that.
Yeah. And what they did was with the soundtrack, which was genius, is that they sold a DVD CD combo. And because of the soundtrack, they made a fuckload of money. Like I went down the rabbit hole on like how the movie did. So like it made everybody money, but it, the first one just made him a lot of money. So really, let's talk about capitalism now, guys.
You got another hour?
Yeah, let's talk about capitalism in relation to art. I think that we could do at least.
I mean, it's a subject in Blair Witch 2. Jeffrey Donovan is running a Blair Witch factory of selling little stick figures.
He's merchandising.
Turning Wiccan culture into merch.
That's right.
I don't know.
It insults Erica.
That's really what happened. Witches are not. They're all like socialist or communist, and the second you profit off of them, they're gonna ruin your life.
Yeah. That was what the Blair Witch didn't like about these characters and why they needed to be framed for orgy murder. But that, I think, will wrap it up for Book of Shadows. Was there a Book of Shadows?
I asked myself that too.
You know what? Hold on. That's not even. We don't need to get into that. It's fine.
Wait,
that's it for.
If you had asked me this 5 years ago, I would have an answer for it. And now I'm like, wait, why is it called Book
of Shadows?
Wait,
someone, please let us know.
I do think there was like some. I thought I read that there was some bonus footage or they did some like short that was supposed to advertise the movie, and maybe the Book of Shadows was included in that or something. I don't know, but yeah.
That actually made my brain hurt when you just brought up the title. I'm like, wait, I feel insane that I haven't been thinking about that every day of my life. Why is that called?
It is apparently named after the real world witchcraft term for a witch's personal spell book.
Is it for the Wiccans? Is that like what it is?
I guess.
Oh, okay.
I guess so. It's like it's part of Wiccan lore, I guess.
Okay. It was Erica the whole time.
It was Erica. That's what it was.
All right, can we start? Let's start the podcast over.
Yeah, we'll use that with. I'd feel better to re-record that and like have this information. But yes, that is going to wrap it up for Blair Witch 2 and for this week's episode, which was once again The Rage, Carrie 2, and Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2. Thanks so much, BenDavid, for joining us and for showing us these films. Where can people find your work? What do you got coming up?
They can watch Scott Pilgrim on Netflix now, or watch my season of Are You Afraid of the Dark somewhere on a streaming thing. But in 2026, there'll be a bunch of stuff. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm not allowed to say release dates. Mm-hmm. But, if you like video games, I have one. And if you like physical media, there's a Scott, and it has a lot of audio commentaries that are mostly just me and Brian.
And if you like action comedy movies.
But I'm going to warn people, we did commentaries for all the episodes, and it's really just me and Brian laughing at our own jokes. So I'm going to end up hated over that. But yeah, and then Mike and Nick and Alice, an action comedy starring Vince Vaughn, James Marsden, Asa Gonzalez, Keith David, Jimmy Tatro, and a bunch of really cool people. Will be out sometime soon, and I think it's pretty cool. I think it's a pretty good Carrie sequel. So, yeah, I hope people enjoy that.
Looking forward to it.
Hell yeah!
Well, thanks, guys. I love this. I love this podcast, and also people should buy the shirt because it has my name on it.
People should.
That's right.
Exactly.
That's right.
Exactly. That was how we trapped everyone. We were like, it has BenDavid's name on it. BenDavid fans have to go crazy. They have to get this shirt.
Yep. And now all those guests have to return because they're on the shirt.
Exactly.
That's a good way to get people to a podcast. Your name will be on a shirt someday.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll immortalize you.
For our listeners, we're going to be back in 1 week's time over on the Patreon, actually doing an extension of BenDavid's episode, a little bit inspired by it. We're going to be talking about the Silent Night, Deadly Night sequels that we haven't talked about. We've only ever covered the first slasher film, and it's being remade right now with Corey from Halloween Ends in the lead role of Billy Chapman. So we were kind of interested in that. And so we're going to talk about Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Speaking of a movie that was a cynical cash grab that was incredibly, they filmed just like 40 or 50 minutes of a movie and then put 30 minutes of the original movie into the front of it to give you flashbacks. Definitely way more insane than Carrie 2, just putting in like a minute, 2 minutes of Sissy Spacek in there, at some point. So we're going to talk about that. But more importantly, Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 3, Better Watch Out, directed by Tulane Blacktop's Monty Hellman as a direct-to-video sequel. I cannot wait for people to see what that guy has in store for you as a Silent Night, Deadly Night sequel. It is incredibly bizarre. Bill Moseley wears a Tupperware bowl over his head where you can see his brain through it.
Yeah, it's like old school sci-fi horror almost imagery.
There is a lot of Twin Peaks alumni who show up in the movie, and also Mulholland Drive's Laura Herring is in the movie in one of her early roles. It's a bizarre movie. And then in 2 weeks' time over on the main feed, we're going to have a special guest back on where we're going to be going not holiday themed mode, but just cold, snowy, wintry mode. We're going to be talking about the movie Ravenous from 1999, directed by Antonia Bird, and a movie called Wolf's Hole from 1987 that I have not seen, but is directed by the Czech director behind Daisies.
Cool.
The Ravenous score is so good, but I have to tell a Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 story, which is the first time I saw that. I saw it in a theater, and my friend Brian Collins found out I didn't know anything about it. So he's like, I need to sit next to you. I'm like, why is that? I'm like, okay. So he sat next to me, and the movie started, and I'm watching it. I'm like, I don't know what is he talking about? I'm like, hold on. Wait, what's happening? Wait, what's happening? Is this a clip show? Like, I like, he could just, and that was not me being verbal. That was just the look on my face. He could just see me become more like a cartoon character of like, in real time, just witnessing someone not knowing what that movie is going to be. So I've done that to friends since. Where like I'm like, hey, we watched Silent Night, Deadly Night. I was like, all right, we're gonna watch 2, and then just watching them gradually be like, wait, are they gonna keep doing this?
That's like torture. Dude. I had that experience. Everyone will hear about it next week, but it was like I just couldn't believe how long that goes on.
Even though I warned Jamie about it, he didn't believe how much.
I was like, it's gotta be like 10 minutes at the most, right?
But I just had a similar situation, which I started watching the documentary on the Blu-ray, and I started it, and I thought it was like one of those 13-minute ones, and I looked down, I'm like, wait, I'm like 30 minutes into this. I'm like, wait, there's hours talking about this movie. I'm like, but the movie doesn't even have that much new footage.
Yeah, for real. I think it's like 45 minutes of new footage.
All right, that's it. Sorry, beautiful. I didn't mean to do a big tangent on that, but people better listen to that episode. I bet it's great.
Yeah, no, it's good advertisement. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Next week over on the Patreon. Look forward to it. But that's going to wrap everything up for this week. Thanks so much for listening, and keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy, everybody.